my name is Taylor Rose and welcome back to my channel where we talk about everything reading and writing. So today we are reading another book. Well, I mean, I've already read it, but I'm going to walk you through it. So last week I posted a summary review for the first book in this duology, Divine Rivals. And today we're going to talk about the second book of the duology, Ruthless Vows by Rebecca Ross. At the end, I will also give some information about the prequel, Wild Reverence. I might make a video on, probably not. Now that I've been thinking about it, I think that reading Wild Reverence first probably ruined the experience of reading this duology for me, because it left me with so many world building questions. And we talked about that a little bit in the previous video, but I'm going to go more in depth in this book because it actually addresses more of the world building, whereas the previous book was very shallow. So before we get started, here's my disclaimer. This video is not for the author, associates of the author, people who love this book and would fight to defend it. While overall I did enjoy the reading experience I had, I just ultimately felt like something was missing. There was a gap between the world I was supposed to be immersed in and then the world that was actually portrayed to me through the writing. If that's not something you can deal with, that's okay. I will see you next time. Likewise, if you are against spoilers, I'm going to be going over the entire book in this video, so it's just not for you, and that's okay. But if you don't care about spoilers or you've already read this book, hop on this train as we get rolling. So the previous book left off with our main character, Iris Winnow, arriving back in Oath with her newly rediscovered brother, Forrest. She has been separated from her brand new husband, Rowan, or I keep calling him Rowan, Roman Kit, while they were working as war correspondents on the front of this war between two of the gods, Inva, Skyward, and Dacre, Underling. So this book first picks up with a prologue from Inva's POV, much like the previous book ended with an epilogue from Dacre's POV. So we start off with Inva, and she's just kind of reflecting on how we even got into this situation, because we learned over the course of the previous book that Inva's powers are related to music, specifically that of stringed instruments. And she used this power in the underworld to put Dacre and the other remaining gods, their names I guess aren't super important, but Alva, Mir, and Luz. Alva being Dacre's sister, and the other two, if I'm remembering correctly, were both Skyward gods. Though they were Skyward, I wouldn't say that they were like aligned with Inva. This is something that's explored more in Wild Reverence. Basically, all the gods are ready to backstab each other at a moment's notice. You blink wrong, and this guy you thought was your best friend for the last 500 years puts a blade in your throat, you know. So she had put him to sleep several times before this extended sleep. Basically, you know, the first time he slept for 3 days, the second time he slept for over a week. And then this third time, she managed to get him to sleep for over 200 years. Since the other gods were put to sleep by Inva's power, Inva has been living in Oath secretly, in hiding, blending in with the mortals. So she's been there for the centuries. The other gods have been asleep, with the humans believing that Inva was also asleep and buried just outside of Oath. So, you know, through this prologue, she does reflect on how the city has changed in that time. And so basically Inva has found a particular cafe which she is going into with a purpose that is not revealed to the reader, but she is searching for a door. I'm gonna be honest, I don't think that this actually leads to anything. I don't know. I don't know. I'm under the impression from the rest of the book that she doesn't actually go into this doorway, so I don't get it. I don't know really what's happening. But we then switch back to Iris, our main female character. So spring has arrived. The weather is comparatively fantastic from recent weather that Iris has had to deal with. But despite this, something is just wrong. She just feels off. And that is because she believes she is being followed. So she's on her way to work, and she initially believes that the person following her is her brother, Forrest. Ever since they've returned to Oath, he's just been increasingly suspicious that she's going to try and run away and leave him. She had promised him at the end of the previous book that she would remain with him because there's really no way she could go and save Roman, and Forrest is her brother. She understands why he did what he did, even if what he did, saving her and abandoning Roman, was ultimately hurtful to her. Which, I don't know, I felt like Iris was just very understanding. I guess Forrest didn't really betray her. You know, I feel like that's kind of a common trope in fantasy. Someone you like trusted implicitly does something purposefully to hurt you, or they know it will hurt you, but they do it anyways. He kind of, like, she just married this guy yesterday, right? He wasn't like clued in, but he just ignored her when she asked to go back and told her, no, it'll fuck up everything, right? So, you know, I guess I can see why she's not like furious with him, but Iris, you know, works with Forrest. She has convinced him to try and trust her. So thinking, is he like, right? So she looks around, but doesn't see anybody. And she kind of just like sums it up with this idea that like, oh, I was expecting to see my brother, but now my brother's a different person, you know? So like, who am I really looking for? You know, that person's dead essentially. But she's on her way to work, and you know, she's almost there. She's almost to the Ink-Ridden Tribune, the newspaper where she is employed as a war correspondent. And she just gets this urge to turn around one more time, and she sees that there is someone down the street, but they immediately turn and enter a doorway. So she kind of puts it in the back of her mind and goes into the office. In the office, she runs into Addie. So that is the other war correspondent that she befriended in the previous book. She was meant to escape with Addie, but unfortunately, due to Forrest intercepting her, she was unable to escape with Addie. So this is our moment to learn that Addie did make it safely out of Avalon Bluff and return to Oath unharmed. Iris asks Addie if they've received any news, but they haven't. And Iris reflects on the fact that she has sent multiple telegrams out trying to find Roman. Missing person alert. Stop. Roman C. Kit. Stop. Black hair, blue eyes, war correspondent. Stop. Last seen in Avalon Bluff. Stop. Contact Iwinnow via Oath Telegram Office. Stop. But she has received no answers, no responses, nothing about where Roman is. So she doesn't know. Is he still alive? Did he die? Has he been taken by Dacre? She has no idea, right? As Iris is getting ready, getting settled for her workday, her boss, Helena Hammond, comes up and, after asking if Iris is all right, because she's looking, kind of peakish, she hands her a letter. And this letter is from Marisol, the B&B owner who was sheltering them in Avalon Bluff. Marisol is happy to hear that Iris made it out safe, and she expresses her condolences about the situation with Roman. And Iris just, it's still really fresh. It's only been 2 weeks since, they got married, and then the attack happened literally the next morning. And it's just like, ugh. And I really liked this paragraph. 2 weeks felt like a gasp of time. It could have been yesterday for how raw Iris's inner wounds were. And yet here in Oath, surrounded by people who were living life as normal, as if war didn't rage kilometers to the west. It made those days at Avalon Bluff feel like a fever dream, or like they had happened years ago. And Iris's memory had retraced those moments so many times they had turned sepia with age and wear. Or is it sepia? I don't know. Suddenly, an unusual person steps into the newspaper's office. It is Chancellor Verlies, so the, like the leader of this city, who has been kind of pressuring the newspapers not to publish pro-Inva materials. He's kind of hinting, wink, wink, be neutral, cough, cough. Actually, we might like Dacre. And yeah, so obviously Iris isn't a fan. Neither is Helena. But the Chancellor follows Helena to her office where they're having a conversation. After the Chancellor leaves, Helena calls Addie and Iris to come speak to her and basically tells them that the Chancellor has threatened her, that if Helena publishes any more articles in the Inkridden Tribune that lean towards pro-Inva sentiment, that he will have her throat, basically. He has accused her of trying to stir up trouble and make people panic on purpose, which, dumb. They should be panicking. The war is on their doorstep, but he's, basically hiding it. But Helena, responds that she is not going to be cowed. She wants them to continue writing about the war. But unfortunately, that means she needs them to return to the war front very soon. And of course, she's reluctant to ask this of them since they almost died, but they do both agree. However, since Marisol is no longer in Avalon Bluff is no longer available, they will be going in a different way, but Helena can't share those details yet. So Iris knows she's gonna have to go home and convince her brother to let her go. As she is heading home, she realizes that she is being kind of followed again. And she's convinced it's her brother, who at this point, I believe he's still unemployed. So it's like he doesn't have anything to do but follow her around secretly. She runs home because, she's uncomfortable and she's fairly close when she realizes that the door is... And so she calls out Forrest, hello, is that you? Because that's very unusual, especially considering what her brother's been through. And then there's cigar smoke. And she's like, that is especially strange. But when she starts walking through the apartment, she comes face to face with a man, Mr. Ronald Kitt. So Roman's father, her father-in-law. And he asks her, hello, Miss Winnow, where is my son? And so, of course, Iris is like, oh, this is not how she thought she would meet her new father-in-law. And of course, he's a very intimidating man. So she, kind of says oh, I wasn't expecting you. And he's like, sorry for dropping in unannounced, but my son hasn't been keeping me informed. And so I thought you would know where he is. And she is kind of like, She's trying to be polite, offers him tea, etc. And he basically brushes her off like, are you deaf? Didn't you hear me? Where is he? And she kind of, dodges the question again, saying, of course I did. You don't know where your son is, but you think I do. And Mr. Kitt obviously is kind of like, why are you being so cagey? And she's looking at him, realizing wow, Roman does look a lot like him. But there's just an inner light in Roman that has been extinguished in his father via old age and alcohol. So Mr. Kitt does throw an article at her, and it is her headline, Dacre bombs Avalon Bluff, gasses citizens and soldiers in the streets, by Inkridden Iris. And so he's kind of like, I couldn't figure out why my son went to go be a war correspondent, but now I get it. He went after you. And she realizes he doesn't know that they're married, obviously. How would he know? But she doesn't know what to say. And Mr. Kitt accuses her of bewitching his son with her articles because, he's always been silly and attracted to stories and stuff. And, you're entangling him on purpose. So it's like, it's really clear that Mr. Kit thinks Iris is a gold digger, essentially. And he's basically just like, leave my son alone, tell me where he is, and, you know, skedaddle out of here. But that is when he notices her fidgeting with the wedding ring. And he's like, oh, so you're pregnant. And of course, Iris is like, excuse you? No. You've been following me. You broke into my apartment. You've probably been looking through everything in here. Like, and now you're insulting me, like implying that Roman only married me because he knocked me up, like, and that I'm doing this for money or something. Get out of here. And you know, she threatens to call the police, and he basically threatens her, telling her that like Roman can't hide behind her for much longer. Like, he's gonna find out whenever he gets back to the apartment, like, let him know that he needs to come speak to his dad. And Iris is basically, she spills the beans at this point. She's like, he's not here. I don't know where he is. He's not in the city. And that's when and that's when Mr. Kit realizes, like, oh shit, he didn't get out of Avalon Bluff. And then drops this, right? Mr. Kit arched a brow, but then Iris's unspoken words seemed to hit him. Some love you must have for him then, Miss Winnow, to leave him behind in Avalon Bluff while you saved yourself. He stepped past her, finally quitting the flat. Oh, ding! He's digging the knife in her chest. Man, oh, rough. And so after Mr. Kit is gone, Iris starts writing this really sad letter to Kit, Roman, her husband. But she is interrupted when her brother finally comes home. And he immediately picks up on the fact that like someone was smoking a cigar in here. And she, you know, tells him what happened with Mr. Kit. And, you know, Forrest is just like, oh shit, man. But they share dinner together, and you can see like they're trying to repair their relationship, but like the tension between them is still just so awkward. It's unfortunate. But he reveals that he got a job that day. So, you know, he unfortunately can't go back to his previous job. He was an apprentice at a astrologist or something. But he doesn't want people he knows asking questions. So he's trying to avoid people he's already acquainted with. So he's getting a different job. I think he's working at like a mechanics now. And this is when Iris reveals to him that her boss, Helena, wants her and Addie to return to the front. And of course, Forrest is super upset. But Iris asks him, like, why did he go to war in the first place? And it's like, of course, she already knows that her brother was, like, he heard Inva singing or playing her instrument or whatever. Both together. And that's why he went. He was compelled by her music to go. But Forrest realizes that's not really what she's asking. He asks, like, do you mean what I was fighting for? And he says that he was fighting for their future, for their family, for everyone in the West who needed help. So, like, it wasn't for Inva specifically. It was for more benevolent reasons towards humanity. And Iris tells him, like, that's the same reason why she wants to go write these articles. That's why she's going to go back to the front for their future. And this was touched on in the previous book, but since Kit broke his, I guess, connection to Dacre, his wounds have begun to hurt and bleed. So, like, he's having a hard time kind of recovering. But since his wounds were mortal wounds, and there was, you know, obviously he should have died, and there was no way he could have survived those wounds, he's reluctant to go to a doctor because it would be suspicious. So Forrest talks a little bit more about, like, what he went through when Dacre took him, and what everything that Dacre did to him by healing his wounds, erasing his mind, etc. And, you know, he's warning her, like, I know part of the reason you want to go is to try and find Roman, but, like, he's not going to remember you. Like, I only remembered you because I found our mother's locket in the trench where you dropped it. Forrest doesn't have something like that. So I don't want you to go. It's too dangerous, and Roman won't remember you. She returns to her typewriter. However, it's just a normal typewriter. It is not the Alouette that she lost back in Avalon Bluff, right? So even though it's an ordinary typewriter, she does put it in the wardrobe, but when she opens the door, it hasn't gone anywhere because it's just a normal letter. That night, while Iris is sleeping, she has a dream. At first, she believes she's woken up and she hears music, which is strange because before her mother died, her mother traded off their radio. But she gets up and walks into the living room where she's surprised to find her mother listening to the radio. And she's wearing the purple coat that she wore when she died, but she looks happy. And Iris goes to talk to her and she's confused because she's like, why is this music so familiar? And Aster, her mother, tells her just to listen. And so they're sitting there focusing on the music, and Iris realizes like, oh, this is stringed instruments, like this is illegal. But her mother just kind of laughs like, you can't outlaw music, like it's so beautiful. You know, why should something like this ever be illegal? As they are talking, her mother begins to fade away. And of course, Iris is distraught because they were kind of having this moment when she wakes up and realizes this was a dream, and Forrest is shaking her awake. Right? Iris realizes that she is late for work, so she rushes to go. Forrest offers to walk her, but she tells him no, and she rushes, jumps on the tram, gets there where she sees that someone has graffitied the doorway to the building where the Inkrin Tribune's office is with, "Where are you, Inva?" And she's kind of reflecting that like in the last 2 weeks, things like that have become increasingly more common. There are like threatening phrases about the gods put on a lot of public buildings, and she can't really decide who she thinks would do something like this. Like, is it someone really against Inva? Is it someone just hurt that they lost family in this war? Is it an is it an agent of Dacre's, etc.? And because of this, she's also kind of like a little annoyed. Like, where are you, Inva? Like, you've kind of, she didn't really start all this because Dacre was the one on the offensive, but it's like Inva convinced people to fight for her and then just kind of disappeared, But as Iris goes into the office, finally, everyone just turns and looks at her until Helena says, "I'm sorry, kid," and hands her a newspaper with the headline, "Dacre saves hundreds of wounded in Avalon Bluff by Roman C. Kit." So while it is proof that Roman is alive, it is also proof that Roman has been taken by Dacre. And the first paragraph reads, "There are two sides to every story. You may be familiar with one, told through the lens of a goddess who has drawn many of your innocent children into a bloody war. But perhaps you would like to hear the other, one that would see your children not wounded but healed, one that would see this land mended. A story not just confined to a museum or a history tome that many of us will never touch. Tome? But a story that is in the process of being written. Written now as you hold this paper, reading my words. For I am here at the front, safe among Dacre's forces, and I can tell you what you long to know from the other side." And Helena's just like, Roman has turned on us. Super dramatic. And so this is the first time we cut to Roman's POV, and he is at his typewriter, just having no idea what to write. And Roman thinks this is because he can't remember anything, but Dacre told him that it'll be fine. He'll remember what's actually important and find his place, and he doesn't need to worry. So when Roman first awoke after being taken by Dacre, he was underground. He was in the underling realm. He was naked, laying out on a table type thing, and he, of course, freaks out. He gets up and starts like trying to figure out where he is, because obviously he doesn't recognize anything, and he doesn't remember how he got here. He is naked, so of course he looks down and sees the horrible scarring that is now like his right leg, which was severely injured during his time in the trenches, but it's healed. Like the scars are smooth and there's no pain, right? And he thinks like, oh, if I squeeze and it hurts, like I'll remember something, but like there's no pain, so it doesn't spark any memories, and he is just kind of confused. He looks at his hand and there's a ring indentation specifically on his pinky because they were given rings that didn't fit them. So he had it on his pinky. But you know, he's locked in. He can't escape. But then a food delivery comes. It's just whoop, slid under the door, and he eats it and then realizes like, oh, there's a pile of clothing. And so he picks it up and it's a jumpsuit that says underling correspondent. And he's kind of like, this is really familiar, but I don't know. And he's uncomfortable. Like he feels uncomfortable, but he doesn't know why, but he puts it on anyways. And then the door opens. It's not really a door. It's like a crack that widens, which is why he couldn't figure out how to escape. But there is a soldier, one of Dacre's soldiers. And it is, he introduces himself as Gregory Shane, but Roman doesn't remember his name. So even though it's being narrated like Roman did this, Roman did that, he doesn't actually know his name's Roman. And so he, you know, is starting to panic, like, oh my God, who am I? And Gregory tells him, don't worry, like it'll come back to you. It'll take a while. You've been here for a few days, but come with me. Someone wants to talk to you. And so they are walking through these weird hallways that have like glowing veins of mineral going through them. And Gregory notices that Roman is looking around. And so he's like, wait, we're gonna blindfold you, buddy. So Roman's blindfolded. Now he can't see anything. They're walking, turning, going around. And finally they go up a series of stairs, which Roman realizes like the temperature is changing. And when they step through what seems to be a doorway, all of a sudden he's bathed in sunlight. So this is him coming into the mortal realm above ground. And Gregory Shane is like announcing his presence. But of course, you know, the mystery voice that they're talking to, cough, cough, Dacre, he is basically like, I told you not to bring him here. What are you doing? And the Lieutenant Gregory is like, well, he doesn't remember his name. So I thought maybe being in this room would like jog his memory. And so Dacre is like, okay, fine, let him look around, whatever. Lieutenant Shane comes back and says, Dacre is ready to see you, and takes him through. And they step into the kitchen where at the table there are 2 typewriters in front of Dacre. And Dacre indicates the typewriters and asks Roman if they look familiar. And of course, Roman, you know, is drawn to these typewriters because they are familiar. They are the 2 alouettes, number 2 and number 3. So Roman's and Iris's. And Dacre asks him, which one is yours? And Roman's looking at them, and the first one is kind of like triggering kind of muscle memory. He, you know, feels like he's typed on it before. He's like recalling the feeling of using it. And when he looks at the other one, he doesn't have that same feeling. He feels unease, but he doesn't feel like it's his. And so he tells Dacre that the left typewriter is his. And Dacre says to one of the other soldiers, give him or prepare that typewriter for him in his room and destroy the other. At which point Dacre then takes Roman out into the garden. He takes Roman all the way to the field where Dacre originally found him, and Dacre tells him, like, I found you here almost dying. You were looking for someone. Do you remember anything about that? And of course, Roman doesn't remember it, though, like, now he's getting a headache, and he's like, I can see myself dying here. Like, I'm so uncomfortable. And just Dacre just kind of like tells him, like, humans are just so fragile that to heal you without destroying your mind, I had to kind of put some walls around your memories. And, you know, it's better if your memories return gradually for the sake of your brain. And Roman is just kind of like, oh, why did you save me? Like, I mean, thanks, but why? And Dacre tells him that, like, I want you to write my side of the story. This is when Roman goes back to his room. There is the typewriter, a stack of paper, a bunch of candles, notepads, pencils, yada yada, ready for Roman to start crafting articles for Dacre. But as he touches the typewriter, he realizes this isn't the one that was like spurring on his memories. This is the other one, the one that made him uncomfortable, the one that like kind of feels like it's pulling at him, but he can't remember anything, so he tries to ignore that feeling. Meanwhile, Iris, back in Oath, is trying to insist that Roman has not betrayed them. He's just trying to stay alive and protect himself. which, you know, Helena points out that, yeah, even if that's true, he's still compromised, so we can't trust anything he says, which, yeah, understandable. Glancing back over the article, Iris is drawn to the word museum, where she recalls something. She runs back to her desk, picks up the phone, and she calls the Oath Gazette. So that is the newspaper that she and Roman previously worked for. And Oath Gazette is also who is publishing Roman's Dacre articles, even though technically he quit. Dacre's making them publish the articles. And Iris is calling Sarah Prindle. So that was the secretary girl who works at the Oath Gazette that was kind of friends with Iris and was concerned when she quit. And so, you know, Sarah recognizes Iris's voice, and Iris like begs her like, hey, please, will you come meet me at this cafe near the office? I really need to talk to you. Sarah luckily agrees, and Iris goes and makes her way to the cafe. Sarah does meet her there, and they start talking. Sarah's super confused, like, oh my God, like, you disappeared, Roman disappeared, like, what's going on? And of course, Sarah immediately notices, like, oh my God, you have a ring? Did y'all get married? Like, what is going on? Like, we all kind of figured, but what? And Iris is like, yeah, no, we did. Can I ask you how y'all got the articles? They're like pro Dacre from Roman. And Sarah tells her that this strange man who's kind of creepy showed up and demanded to talk to Zeb Autry, the owner of the Oath Gazette. And he had brought the article. So they didn't see Roman. Roman didn't come bring the article or anything. So Iris is like uncomfortable because obviously this dude has to be working for Dacre. So she's like, how did he get into the city? Like, who is he? We need to figure out who this guy is. And so Iris asks, like, the next time you see him, can you let me know? And I want to follow him. So if you can, like, tell me the next time he's going to come, I'll stand outside and you can signal when he's going to leave. So I know to follow whoever comes out of the building. And Sarah agrees to this. And then Iris makes another request. She's like, hey, also I have a request, but like, it's illegal and dangerous. So I really need it though. Otherwise I wouldn't put you in this position. And so Sarah's like, okay, what do you need? And previously, when they were talking about their dreams, Sarah had said that she had always wanted to work at the museum because she liked history and mythology. And so Iris asks her, like, you're really familiar with the museum, right? Do you think you could help me break in? And Sarah is like, yeah, sure. Which I thought was so funny. She just like, zero questions asked. Of course. Let's go. Pretty funny. I don't know. We cut back to Roman, who is, again, sitting at his new typewriter. Iris's typewriter, and just kind of like stream of consciousness typing, and where like you can see that like he's kind of getting hints about what's going on. He knows that the scars were for somebody, like there's someone that's the reason why he's still alive, and he knows that like he should be dead, and he doesn't know, like he's writing for somebody but doesn't know who, and he's just kind of like, why am I wasting my time? I need to be writing this article for Dacre. But he is just kind of stressed out. He gives up and decides to sleep it off. Hope's inspiration strikes him during the night. Very quickly, he falls asleep and immediately is pulled into a dream where he sees a little girl, and she calls him Carver, and he, you know, feels like very familiar, and he realizes like, this is my sister, and they're running around barefoot and they're children. And he knows that they're trying to avoid their father, and he calls the girl Dell, and they're running around through their garden when they hear their mother, and he hears the name Roman, and he's like, oh yeah, we like our middle names more than our first names. And it just kind of like flashes through days in his life. So he's remembering like times with his sister, with his mother, and then all of a sudden it cuts to the day his sister died. So he sees her floating face down in the pond where she drowned, and he's, you know, horrified, trying to bring her to life, and it startles him awake. But he realizes, like, at first he's trying to convince himself like this was just a dream, it was just a dream, but then he's like, but then I don't think it was a dream, like I think it was real, and if it was real, that means like I killed my sister. It's my fault she's dead. And he's like overcome with this like horrible sense of guilt and grief. But he steps out into the hallway, crying, like, because after he's done crying, he's like, oh, man, I'm so thirsty now. I get it. And he goes outside and he sees like the hallway's empty. Previously, there's always been a guard outside his door. So he sneaks down to the kitchen where he's shocked to find Dacre just chilling alone. And Roman, of course, is unfamiliar with the gods since they've been asleep for centuries. He's like, don't you need to sleep? And Dacre just kind of laughs like, oh, sometimes. Not really. But Dacre offers him some alcohol. But Roman says, oh no, I came down for a glass of milk. I used to drink it when I couldn't sleep. And Dacre is like, you used to drink it when you couldn't sleep? Like, you're remembering something. And so he's like, oh, so the typewriter's helping you? And Roman is like, oh, just a little bit. You know, I had a dream and I remembered that I had a sister. And surprisingly, Dacre goes to get him the milk and is like, oh, we're so lucky everyone left their livestock behind, which is sad. I mean, I guess at least the livestock's alive. I don't know. I was expecting it to all die in the bombing, but Roman asks, like, what happened to the article I wrote you? And Dacre is like, oh, do you want to see? And he slides the Oath Tribune to a Roman. And Roman is like, oh, not the Oath Tribune, the Oath Gazette. And he's like, the Oath Gazette? Where's Oath? Like, how far is Oath from here? You know, it's 600 kilometers away right now. Roman is like, oh, are you headed to Oath? Are we going there? And Dacre tells him, yeah, we're going to find my wife, Inva. And Roman is like, oh, interesting. And so Dacre immediately is like, she's a trickster, biding her time to betray me. And Roman's like, oh, sorry, dude. That's what this is all about. And Dacre's like, it's more than that. Like, basically telling him, like, I'm not that petty. Like, you'll never understand the machinations of the immortals. But Roman is just kind of like, and Dacre kind of insinuates, like, you've never made a vow before. And Roman is like upset, but he doesn't know why he's upset. Hint, hint, it's because he made a vow to Iris when they got married. But this is when Dacre is like, who are you thinking about? And Roman's like, oh no, like, I'm just thinking about my dream and my sister. And you know, how sad. She died so young. And this is when Dacre tells him about his sister, Alva. So she was the goddess of dreams. Oh, just kidding. I said Mir was Skyward earlier. He was also an underling. And Dacre, talking about Alva's power of dreams, kind of like tries to gaslight Roman by telling him that, like, sometimes your dreams are just things you wish had happened that weren't reality. And so Dacre's telling him, like, I think that your dream of having a little sister was just like an expression of your desire for family. And Roman is kind of like, maybe, but like the dream felt super real. I heard my family's voices and I walked through what I knew was my old bedroom. I don't know how I'd be able to make up all those details. Like, there was so much detail. And Dacre's kind of like, so you want to have killed your younger sister? Which I'm like, damn. You know, obviously Dacre's doing this on purpose to manipulate Roman, but it's just like, he's going for the jugular. Dacre asks him if his next article is going to be ready after he has upset this poor kid. And Roman is like, oh no, I'm going to need some more time. But he promises to have it ready by sundown of the next day. But Roman heads up to his room, and that's when he realizes, oh, the Oath Gazette has my full name, Roman C. Kit. And that's how he knows that his dream was real, because C stands for Carver. And so he starts to type, my name is Roman Carver Kit, and this is a dead man's story. Spooky. So now that night has fallen, Iris is up in a tree outside of the museum watching a third-story window where she is waiting for Addie to signal that she is ready to go. So Sarah and Addie had snuck into the museum earlier and were waiting for night to fall. The museum is one of the enchanted buildings in the city of Oath, so it locks down at night and cannot be opened. However, because Sarah's father knows one of the guards, she has found out that one of the windows was replaced. And because it's not an original window, it is not affected by the enchantment. So they're able to open that window without the magical alarm going off. So Iris is watching that window when she sees it, and Addie, you know, hanging out of the window, starts throwing a rope to Iris. So she secures it to the tree branch and she gets ready to cross. She's hanging from that rope and just crawling along. You know, she's slowly making her way down with her hands. However, when she's halfway across, she hears someone below her, and so she looks down and sees these figures with masks dressed in dark clothes sneaking through some of the nighttime fog. And she, you know, stays as still as possible, obviously her arms burning, holding on as tight as she can, and hopes that these presumably men will not see her. But luckily, they continue down into an alley, and because initially she thinks, oh my god, they're breaking into the museum too. But they go down into an alley, and so Iris is able to make her way to the window where Addie pulls her in. And so they just assume, like, oh, those must be other criminals. But they, you know, go through the library. Sarah is distracting the guard, so Iris and Addie go ahead and head to the first alouette, which is on display in the museum. And so they break open the glass, gather the typewriter. So all three of them exit out the window, and then they each go back to their own homes. Iris is, you know, shocked to be holding the first alouette and hopes that, like, beyond all hope, this plan works. She is shocked when she goes into her room because letters start shooting out of her wardrobe, and she grabs one and opens it up and realizes that it's one of the letters that Roman sent her. Basically, this first alouette, which was not near a... So this is something you would understand if you read Wild Reverence. Basically, Matilda, the goddess who used her power for the typewriters, her powers were... she could use them through wasted doorways. So doorways that didn't go anywhere. So wardrobe doors or doors to unused rooms. So because the alouette was in the middle of a museum display, it did not have an unused door for letters to come out of. So now that she's brought it to a wardrobe, all the built up letters between her and Roman are now shooting out. And now that she's had confirmation that this typewriter still is enchanted, like the other two, she sits down, writes a letter to Roman, and bloop, puts it into the wardrobe. However, there is no response, and she ends up falling asleep, disappointed. Across the country, I guess, Roman wakes up in his room, and as he gets up, he notices that there is a piece of paper on the floor, and assuming it is something that he dropped, he bends down, picks it up, and realizes he didn't write this. It is a list of 3 questions. What was the name of my pet snail? What is my middle name? Which season is my favorite, and why? So these are all things that Roman and Iris discussed in the previous book. And so he's looking at this like, what in the world? How would I know these answers? This is so weird. When Lieutenant Shane knocks on his door, he shoves the letter in his pocket just automatically without thinking. And Lieutenant Shane tells him, like, pack up everything, we're leaving. Like, you have 5 minutes. Let's go, go, go. And so Roman, you know, starts packing things up. But then he like pulls out the letter and he looks at it again. And he's like, I don't know. Like, is this code? He just feels something weird. And he's kind of like, maybe I should report this to Dacre. I don't know. He's not really sure what to think. But when they go downstairs, Dacre pulls a chain out of his shirt and with a key on it, and he uses it on a door that opens to the underworld. And Roman realizes, like, oh, he must always have been wearing that key, but had it hidden, and like this is how he gets the doorways to work, because previously the door opened to the outside, right? Meanwhile, Iris is also on her way out. When she wakes up that morning, she steps out into the living room and finds Forrest sitting there. And he notices like, oh, she's wearing her jumpsuit, she's leaving. And of course he's upset about this, but he does end up not giving her permission, but he accepts that like she has to do this. But he has her promise that she will be sending updates to him as things develop, as kind of a promise to, I guess, remind her of them. He gives her back the locket from their mother, and she promises like she will not remove it until she's back home and can give it to him. I feel bad. You can just like really feel the resignation in Forrest in this scene, and it got me. As they are journeying away, Roman, who is with Dacre, is reading a newspaper, and he asks Dacre, like, how did you know my name? And Dacre's like, well, I didn't know my name. I just submitted what you submitted, which said Roman. And that's when Dacre reveals, like, oh, you used to work at the Oath Gazette, and this newspaper that published your article. So they knew your initial. And Roman is like, oh, interesting. You knew of me? And Dacre's like, yeah, I knew who you were before I found you. A, everyone sees these newspapers. B, you have a very prestigious last name, Kit. And Roman, of course, is like, oh. And Dacre's like, yeah, your family has been a big supporter of mine. And Roman's like, something feels off about this, but I don't know. Interesting. Okay. So then it's kind of like he's conflicted then, because it's like, you told me I made up my family, but then you're telling me like my family actually is real. Okay. Kind of like to deal with this conflicted feeling, Roman is like, I need to show him that letter. And he starts to pull it out when he freezes. Like he can't take it out of his pocket. He just like, it's just filled with this hesitation, and he ends up shoving it back in his pocket and pulling out the article draft that is due. And he, said that, tells Dacre that like, oh, I wanted your opinion on what I have so far. But Dacre waves him off and tells him they'll talk about that later. Iris, now that she has said farewell to Forrest, is headed to work, but she again feels someone following her. And she's just like, who is this? And she keeps glancing behind her, but doesn't see anybody standing out. But eventually, as she keeps going, she realizes that this guy in a trench coat has been tailing her, but his hat is tilted in a way that she can't really see his face. And so she ends up stopping in the road and demands, like, Mr. Kit, what are you doing following me? And the guy just keeps walking towards her when she realizes, like, oh, this guy is not Mr. Kit. Like, this dude's buff and Mr. Kit is not. So she starts to run down the road when the man calls out, Miss Winnow, like, I have a message for you. So she stops and is kind of like, okay, he's not attacking me. And he apologizes for frightening her, but then brings out an envelope and hands it to her and tells her, like, it's something you want. And she's like, how does this guy know what I want? But she opens it and it's stuffed to the brim with money. So full. And she's like, because she's never seen this amount of money before. And the man reveals that Mr. Kit wants her to sign an agreement to annul the marriage with Roman, and she can keep that money, and that's it. But Iris throws the money to the ground and is basically like, F you, I would never agree to that. Goodbye. And she storms away to the office. Luckily, she's just a block away at this point, so she doesn't have to flee very far. But outside the office, Addie and Helena are waiting by a motor car. Addie is super excited to be going around in the Roadster, as she calls it. And so they're introduced to the driver, whose name is Tobias Bexley. He is a post runner and a race car driver. So he's been hired to drive them through the countryside. He'll be driving them to a town called Winthrop, which is as close to the front lines as Helena wants the girls to go. Basically, they're going to drive to Marisol's sister's house, where Marisol is now living, and then they're going to be stopping in a second town, and then all the way to Winthrop, where they will have to find lodging on their own. Helena is asking them, like, she wants them to find Dacre's plans, his movements, where are his troops going, what's happening to the land and civilians as his troops come closer, eyewitness stories, that sort of thing, even though the Chancellor has threatened him. But Helena is basically like, consequences be damned, I'm publishing the truth, which good for her. But they decide to head out. But before they go, Iris says that she wants to change her byline. So her byline was picked by Helena in the previous book, Ink-Ridden Iris, but Iris wants it to be her name now. She wants to be Iris E. Winnow. And it's revealed that her middle name is Elizabeth, after her grandmother, Daisy Elizabeth. So she is doing this because she hopes that if Roman reads the Ink-Ridden Tribune at any point, that maybe it will trigger a memory for him. So they are zooming out into the countryside in this car, and immediately Addie and Tobias are flirting it up. Their relationship is so cute. Like the banter between them I thought was not like hilarious, but like funny in a really natural, kind of like realistic way, I think. Like I could totally imagine people I know in real life flirting like this, which I liked. Because I feel like sometimes the romantic interactions in books are just like very outlandish. So I really like these. What I thought was funny is that like the car is open, so they have to wear goggles and they're like holding on. It's like driving over these like really rough roads, but eventually they do make it to Riverdown, where Marisol is living. And Marisol, of course, is psyched to see them, and they all head inside, where, you know, after they've settled down, Iris brings out her typewriter, and she is sleeping in the laundry room, specifically because it has a wardrobe. And she types out a message to Kit again, to Roman, asking, "Are you safe? Are you well? I can't stop thinking about you. I can't stop worrying about you. Please write to me wherever you are." She realizes she can't send a message like this to him, so she crumples it up and throws it away. However, while this is happening, Roman, who has now settled in his new lodging in a farmhouse, is drawn to respond to the letter that he picked up earlier. And as he pulls the paper free, he's just filled with intuition. Like, I've done this before again and again and again. And he folds the paper and puts it into the wardrobe before he can think better of it. While Iris is at dinner and they're listening to music on the radio, it is interrupted by a broadcast from Chancellor Verlies, who has declared that all visitors to Oath need to register their presence, as well as that of their family members within Oath. So they need to be able to identify themselves, and as well as be photographed, which is kind of weird. And Marisol is like, oh yeah, visitors, they mean refugees. So basically they're interpreting this as a way for the Chancellor to be able to turn away refugees who don't have family in this city. And Marisol says that their town of Riverdown is preparing to take as many refugees as possible, right? So Iris, after, you know, dinner concludes, goes back to her room and finds that there's the letter, which says, "Who are you? What magic is this?" And she is just like, oh my god, thrilled, but like also scared. She can tell like this is really terse language compared to how Roman usually speaks to her. And so she responds, "Your typewriter. There should be a silver plaque bolted to the inside of the underframe. Can you tell me what it says?" And, you know, he responds with the third alouette for this person. And she is like curious because he has the typewriter with DEW. So Daisy Elizabeth Winnow. And she's kind of confused, like, how did he get my typewriter? Like, why doesn't he have his typewriter, the second alouette? She is happy, A, that her typewriter survived, and B, that Roman is using it. And, you know, she realizes Forrest was right. Roman does not remember me. But she responds talking about how the typewriters work. And it's kind of funny. Their like little exchange does reflect their first letters from the beginning of the last book, where she says like, "Oh, well, I won't write to you anymore. Like, don't worry about it. You're so busy." And Roman is like, who said I didn't want to read your letters? Even though he's still like so standoffish. So it was like, oh, but he does ask for her name and she tells him Elizabeth. So the next day, Tobias drives off without Iris and Addie, but he promises tomorrow that they are going to go to the next town on their itinerary. And I don't know, it's so cute. You can like sense Addie is just like, what if he doesn't come back? Like, because it's been storming and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, oh, don't worry. And Iris is like, are you worried he's going to get stranded or something? And Addie's like, no, I'm worried we'll be stranded here without him. It's just like, there's this like really heartfelt scene where like Marisol basically says that like she considers them to be like little sisters, and she gifts Iris a kind of like a bird watching book. It's just like a little book filled with birds and information about them, and it's supposed to represent like Marisol says like she's apologizing for how upset she was at dinner for like not wanting them to go that far to the front. She says, but then I woke up this morning and heard that nightingale sing in the garden, and it reminded me of my aunt's story of the captive birds. Marisol continued, it reminded me that I cannot hold those I love in a cage, even if it feels like protecting them. And it was just like, that's so sweet. Then we get several more letters between Iris and Roman, but then Roman stops responding because she asked him like to tell her something about himself, and he's like, I don't even know what I would say, like that I can't remember anything. That's so awkward. Every night he is still having these very vivid dreams, and he's had one where he was at work at the Gazette, and Zab is when Iris was being hired, and so Zab's like, hey, I just wanted to give you a heads up, I'm hiring this girl who wrote this great article, and you know, competition's good for you, Kit. Blah blah blah. And this is when he sees Iris in his dream, and he is shocked. I mean, he kind of has like his snobby feelings that he had before. He's like, Iris Winnow, what kind of name is that? But then when he shakes her hand, it's like he's just like, holy, what the heck? He's electrocuted, and he wakes up. And so he's just kind of like, who in the world's this girl in the dream? Like, obviously her name's Iris Winnow, but and so the next day, Dacre kind of notices. He's like, you're acting weird, Roman. Okay. He says, you've been unusually quiet. So I'm going to be paraphrasing dialogue, guys. Okay. Just calm down. And Roman brushes it off. Oh, I feel fine, sir. And so Dacre's kind of like feeling out, like, are his injuries hurting him? Because that means he is remembering more and like separating himself from Dacre. But Roman, doesn't allude to that yet. And they start talking about the magical powers. Dacre admits that, Dacre tells Roman about how the gods get powers. And so Roman, of course, is confused because mythologically, they know that the gods are born with a constellation and that's where their powers came from. But Dacre reveals like, oh, but actually we could steal each other's powers. Roman's surprised by this. It seems to be kind of like lost knowledge for humans. And Dacre tells him, yeah, I was really close with my cousin, Mir. One day he came back and said he got a new power, but that power was to read minds via touch. And after that, Dacre no longer trusted Mir. But since they are traveling forward as they do this, approaching another town, and as they do so, there are gunshots and several soldiers fall. Dacre pushes Roman out of the way. They go to find shelter, and Roman is kind of like, what if there's another sniper in there? Like, but Dacre's like, bullets won't kill me. And Roman's like, but bullets will kill me. And Dacre's like, I'll just heal you. But they go inside, and Dacre hands him the key on his necklace and asks him to unlock a door, which Roman does, and it goes to the underworld. And Roman is just kind of like, oh, what's going on? And Dacre tells him that, because of his past experiences, he decided to make it as hard as possible for people to attack his family. And so that's why he made these keys, and that there are 5 of them. And I guess this one sentence is supposed to be like heavy world building, but I don't know. I just think it's confusing because he says 5 is a sacred number. For you mortals, there are 5 days of the week, 5 boroughs, 5 chancellors, 5 remaining divines, which I don't know. I don't think you've heard anything about the bureaus. You've only heard of one Chancellor. There are 5 remaining divines, but there were tens of them before. You know, I don't know. And he also says that, like, 4 confidants is 1 too few and 6 is 1 too many, which I don't know. Okay. But the sniper has been wounded and captured. He's taken to Dacre. The sniper basically begs, like, just kill me. Like, I would never serve you. Like, bah. And Dacre's just kind of like, haha, funny. And tells them to drag the man downstairs, where he plans to treat his wounds later. Roman, of course, has been standing there in shock this whole time, but as everyone leaves the room, he collapses to the ground and throws up. He's just, like, disgusted by what he just saw. This poor guy bleeding out and then being dragged away, and Lieutenant Shane comes and gives him a cigarette to calm his nerves. The lieutenant's basically just like, you've seen worse than this. Get over it, dude. Roman is just like, if I've seen worse, like, when am I going to remember? And Shane's just kind of like, I don't know. You'll remember eventually. I can't help you with that. And this is where we learn, Shane reveals, like, you think everyone who is healed with his power forgets who they were? He flicked his cigarette to the grass and crushed it beneath his boot before he turned away. That's the furthest thing from the truth, correspondent. So, like, this is your first hint that people who choose to serve Dacre get to keep their memories. Iris, who has now made it to her newest destination, tries writing to Roman asking if he has made it to his new destination. And she kind of drops some hints like, where are you? And she kind of, is like, oh, just kidding. I shouldn't ask you questions like that, but I couldn't help it. And then sends the letter to him. Roman, meanwhile, has settled into his new room when Dacre asks him to bring his typewriter downstairs because he's going to be doing some live dictation for him. And as they are writing, he types several letters with, like, different military information until he starts one that for Mr. Ronald Kitt. And Roman is like, oh, you're writing to my father? And Dacre's like, didn't I mention that he's a faithful servant? And Roman's like, oh, God, okay. But he's just like, oh, okay, well, what do you want to say? And he finishes the letter for his father when one of the captains, Captain Landis, who is one of the key holders for Dacre, comes in and he asks, like, what about the hounds? Like, they haven't been fed. They're mauling the handlers. Like, we need to do something. And Captain Landis is wondering if he can set the hounds free. But Dacre says, no, like, I have messengers out there and I, can't have them be potentially attacked by the hounds. And so then he just casually says, take the weakest of the workers and feed them to the hounds for now. And Captain Landis is like, okay, cool. See it done. Bye. And it's just like, what? Roman is sitting there like, what? Okay. Awkward. And while this conversation was going on, a letter pops out in front of the wardrobe inside this parlor. And he's like, holy shit, it's a letter from Elizabeth/Iris. They can't see it. And so he had casually gotten up and kind of, like, wandered around, like, oh, looking at this parlor and other books around. And he makes his way in front of the wardrobe casually and steps on the letter so that they cannot see it. And so he's relieved that Dacre isn't asking him to follow, and that when everyone leaves, he snatches up the letter and responds like, they almost, the people I'm with almost saw your letter and I'd really rather them not. We need to keep this between us. So we need to, like, come up with a system so that this doesn't happen again. And so they decide to basically write up, like, a test, or, well, Iris will have to write a test email, like, testing 1, 2, 3 type letter before saying anything else. And that Roman will respond if he's able to talk. And so, like, at this point, he is, like, now kind of consumed by this desire to talk to Elizabeth. And I don't know how I feel. I didn't really believe it. I believed it a lot more in the first book, how, like, their feelings grew through these letters. But in her letter, Iris had said that she's heading westward. And that is when Roman connects the dots that she must be fighting for Inva, because they're heading east and she's heading west, right? So Dun dun dun. He's like, oh no. So Iris and Addie are still waiting for Tobias's return, and Iris has typed up a retelling of the myth she received from Roman, the one that reveals Inva, soundly defeated Dacre in the past, because as she had learned by going through some books in the library, pretty much any mention of Dacre has been removed, other than like occasional mentions of his name. So nobody knows really why he's after Inva. And so she is kind of hoping that like maybe they can get this published and show people the light, basically, about this whole Inva Dacre situation. Though they don't know if Helena would actually publish it. So right after this, Tobias strolls back into the house and asks them if they are done, so he can take their messages or their articles and then other people's letters and stuff back to Oath. And it'll take him like a full day to return. And so he, goes out. Addie still is there flirting. Like, don't worry, Bexley. Addie finally broke the silence. We won't wait on you if people begin evacuating. Tobias held her stare for a moment before nodding. Then he turned and was out the door before Iris could so much as blink. As Iris returns indoors, she feels a strange rumbling in the ground. But when she asks everyone else in the house, like, did you feel that? They kind of look at her and she's like, maybe I was imagining it. And then they all admit, no, like we felt that. Like, we've been feeling weird rumblings underground, which I'm assuming they don't live on a fault line or something, because then they wouldn't, like, otherwise they would assume earthquake, right? But they're just like, yeah, we've been feeling these rumblings, and they're kind of nervous about it. They don't know what it would be. Iris goes and she types out her little test message to Roman, and he immediately responds, even though they had technically agreed that like he should be the one writing first. Iris asks him if he has been feeling these strange rumblings, and he tells her that he doesn't know why those would be happening, but if he finds out information, he will let her know. Which, dang, he turned coat real fast. Because at this point, like, he is kind of like sensing Dacre is nefarious, but like it's just feelings, And also they're at war, so it's like, yeah, you're gonna see graphic shit. I don't know, too funny. So the next evening, the night goes, the next day, it's the next evening, it's still storming, and Tobias is not back. So Addie and Iris are pretty stressed. They wake up in the middle of the night to more thunder, but she hears a slamming door sound, and she, is nervous. Like, it could be an intruder, could be the hounds, something. She doesn't know. And so she sneaks downstairs, where she runs into Addie, and they both, sneak down, where they get ready to confront the intruder, when it's revealed, it's actually Tobias. So he had been delayed because of the storm, and they're like, oh my god, we thought you were an intruder. And he's like, what? I said I'd be back. Like, sorry I'm late. Basically, Tobias is like, nothing can stop me. Like, I'll make it wherever. And there's some more flirting between Addie and Tobias, and I don't know, it was super cute. And Iris is just like, oh, I should leave. So she, sneaks back to her room. Likewise, Roman is also sneaking around in the dark. He goes down to the foyer and notices like there's no one there. There's no one guarding the doors. The fire in the hearth has burned down, and he, tiptoes his way into the war room, where he sees that there is a map of Cambria, and he's like looking at all the locations that he knows about, when he sees the divine graves marked. So of course there was one in the north, south, east, west, and the central area. When he touches the map with his hand, it kind of like magically activates, and there are lines on the paper that, like, some of them are dark, some of them are like glowing. Certain areas are like cerulean, and he's kind of like, oh, there's a map underneath. And so he pulls up the top map and looks underneath and realizes like, oh, it's a map of the underworld. And so he's studying it, like trying to remember it, trying to memorize it, when he hears Dacre's voice, like asking, oh, did you have another bad dream? And Roman drops the map and tries to like look cool, calm, and collected, and turns back to Dacre, who's staring at him. And he's like, oh no, I didn't have a dream. I just can't sleep in general. I just want to know what's going to happen. Dacre's kind of like, you don't need to worry about death. Like, you'll never die. You'll never feel pain again. And Roman's just kind of like, oh, great. And he's like asking him, because the next place they're going is Hawkshire. And so Roman is like, am I going to be at your side in Hawkshire? And Dacre's just kind of like, why do you want to know this? But Roman, is like, it seems like it's going to be an important fight. Like, yeah, he's basically just kind of like, well, I'm not a fighter, so IDK. Like, I just have my words. At least that's what I remember. And so Dacre, indicates the map and is just like, what do you see? And they are talking about what the map represents. And Dacre, tells him, like, that is my domain. Those are the ley lines. So where magic is flowing. But while he was asleep, it also went to sleep. So that's what the dark lines are. But he has reactivated the ones that are glowing, and that his doorways are marked where those like little cerulean spots are. And Roman realizes, like, oh, that's how my article is being delivered. The messenger guy is going through the underground, because obviously above ground is too dangerous, and he's so fast, like there has to be some sort of magical element to this. And Dacre just tells him, yeah, no, that's how Val's delivering your letters. And he's just kind of like, oh, okay. And Roman notices, like, there's one line that has made it to Oath, though most of the other lines are still asleep or dead. Roman just, without thinking, asks, like, oh, are we going to your sister's grave? And Dacre is immediately suspicious. But Roman indicates, like, well, it's nearby to Hawkshire, like, and you spoke fondly of her, so I thought maybe you'd want to go wake up your sister. And Dacre is just kind of like, he blows him off, like, I don't need her, but like, meet me here tomorrow at dawn. Bring your typewriter. You need to prove your dedication. And that's it. So after he is done with Dacre, Roman runs back to his room because now he knows what's going to be happening. And he immediately writes Elizabeth Iris a letter telling her that she needs to burn this letter after she reads it, but that he wants her to flee, basically. He's like, hey, I figured out that you work for Enva. Loss of life is imminent, and I don't want you to get hurt. So basically, I figured out what those noises were. Dacre is fixing the pathways of his realm, so the underrealm, whatever. He is going to use that to reach Oath before his soldiers even make it there. So probably what they're hearing are workers clearing out those areas, and that their next plot above ground is to take Hawkshire, and that will happen in 3 days' time. So again, he's using those ley lines and the magical doorways to enter the town and take it over. So he's like, please retreat. Don't go anywhere except for Oath, because he's going to attack that next. And don't respond to this because I am away from keyboard and I don't want anyone to find your letter. And of course, Iris getting this letter is like, I can't burn this. Like, if I don't tell someone, like, I have those lives on my hand. And so she immediately goes downstairs and she finds Tobias and asks, like, if he will drive her to Hawkshire. And Addie is like, what? She's also outside with him. And he's basically like, well, Helena told me not to. Like, you can't go beyond Winthrop. And so then Iris is like, okay, fine. But then how far is Hawkshire from Winthrop? Like, if you can at least take me to Winthrop today, I'll figure out how I can get to Hawkshire. And Addie's like, what's going on? Why are you so desperate all of a sudden to head out there? And Iris basically is like, she hands them both the letter and they read it and are like, who did you get this letter from? But Tobias is like, okay, fine, let's go. And the reason that they are going to Hawkshire, not only is that where the attack is going to happen, that is also where Keegan is. So if you remember Keegan, that is Marisol's wife, who was one of the captains, I don't know. She was like a commander in the army. And so they are going to go warn her so that she can save her soldiers. So Roman, meanwhile, is following Dacre down into the underground, and it's very different than he remembered seeing it. And this was actually like a great description that wasn't in Wild Reverence at all. I was like, okay. In Wild Reverence, they made it sound like it was just like a bunch of winding tunnels, and the colors told you like which area you were in. And there was mist that rose and fall that like indicated the time of day. And then there was like a dining hall where they threw parties and stuff. This is saying that there's like basically like a big open area that's like a town. So there's like a forge and little shops. And, you know, I was like, that, why wasn't that in the other book? I don't know. Roman realizes while they're underground that some of these soldiers actually aren't human. Their glamours are removed while they are underground. And so there's like a woman with claws and a dog with 3 eyes and all sorts of weird things. So he's like kind of stressed, I for obvious reasons, when, you know, Dacre dismisses him to go eat. And while he's eating, Roman is like studying this city, trying to memorize how they got down there. He is interrupted by Lieutenant Shane, who gives him a pack and tells him like he's responsible from now on, and that Roman is joining the lieutenant's platoon. And Roman, of course, is like, I'm with a platoon now. And Shane is like, yeah, he thought it was a good idea because we're from the same place. And Roman's like, what? Where are you from? And Shane's like, I'm from Oath. And they're like, oh. And he just leaves. So I don't know. Shane is so suspicious. But, you know, now Roman is marching down behind Shane's platoon, complaining about blisters, and they're going through the tunnels, and they go to another big chamber, but there's no market, no balconies, no nothing, but they set up camp there. And that is when he has another dream of Iris Winnow. And he's like, just like, this girl's haunting my dreams. Like, this is so weird. And it's Iris telling him about Forrest, but then it morphs into he's in his house and he's typing on his typewriter, and he knows like he's typing out his story with Dell, and he sees himself fold the paper and put it in the wardrobe. And he is like, and he starts rereading letters he has, and he sees that the letters are from Iris. And then he's at the Gazette, and he knows like, oh, Iris is leaving, she's quitting. And he's so like, how do I get her to stay? And it was just like, oh, he only knew that he felt most alive when she was near. And he stood before the doors and watched her walk to him. He sought to read every line of her expression, every thought flickering through her mind, as if she were a story on a page. He was desperate to know what she was thinking, what he could say to convince her to stay. But then Dacre's voice wakes up Roman, and Dacre is announcing, like, it is time to take Hawkshire. Meanwhile, Iris has made it to Hawkshire. They pull up to a patrol car with soldiers who are guarding the town, and they try to turn them away. But Iris insists that she has an important message for Captain Keegan Torres. Keeps insisting that it's important, but they're saying, like, we'll take the letter to her. But Iris is like, no, I have to deliver it. And they see that they're wearing the war correspondent jumpsuits. And so finally, one of them is like, I'll take one of you to go see her. And so Iris is taken to go see Keegan. And Keegan, of course, is like, why are you here? It is kind of funny because the private is like, the brigadier will meet with you soon. And Iris is confused, like, I'm here to see Captain Keegan. And oh, Keegan got promoted. So she is like waiting and waiting and waiting. And then Keegan comes in and is, it was kind of funny. She's like, Brigadier Torres, I know you probably don't remember me, but Keegan's like, I officiated your wedding. Like, why wouldn't I remember you, kid? But Iris hands her the letter, and immediately Keegan again is like, how do you have this? And this is when Iris admits, like, I have a magical connection with Roman through our typewriters. And she spills everything. She tells all of the history with the typewriters to Keegan. And Keegan's like, well, when did you get this? yesterday morning. So that means that they only have a day or so before Dacre actually attacks, if Roman is telling the truth. Iris, of course, is stressed by this because while she knows she's saving lives, she also feels guilty that she is not burning the letter like Roman asked. So after they eat and settle in, Iris falls asleep and has another dream of her mother. She wakes up in her cot, gets up and walks down the hallway where she finds her mother leaning against the wall, and they're listening to a violin in the background. But Iris is like, who in the world's playing that? Because, you know, those are illegal. And her mother just like insists, like, listen to the music, Iris. And so she's listening and trying to recognize this music. And she's like, I don't know what this song is. Why are you here? Because her mom's dead. And all of a sudden, everything starts melting together. And of course, Iris is upset, you know, seeing her mother start to dissolve in front of her, but then realizes like, oh, I'm dreaming. And she feels rumbling and starts falling through the floor, where she wakes up, and the rumbling keeps going. And so Iris, you know, gets up and tries to find someone who's awake to tell her what's going on. But she sees through a window that they are loading up injured soldiers into a lorry to evacuate the city. And Iris, you know, starts helping out, lifting people into the lorry. And seeing this, they all recognize, like, oh, they believe the letter. Keegan shows up like, yes, I came to tell you that we've started evacuating and y'all should go. And Addie asks, like, well, where are we evacuating to? And Keegan admits, like, they are going to Oath. They are the last of Inva's forces. The rest have fallen, which is like tragic. But and hearing this, the three of them insist on staying and helping get all the wounded soldiers evacuated, to try and prevent Dacre from taking them. And she warns them, like, you know, you're gonna be stuck behind all of these lorries if they attack. Like, that's so dangerous. But Tobias is like, hey, I'm a race car driver. Don't worry about it. Like, I can figure it out. And so they begin helping with the evacuations. And so finally, all the wounded soldiers are evacuated. Keegan lets them know that they can go as well. And so they, you know, pack up into the roadster and they head out, passing all the barricades. I didn't really understand this part. I feel like the wounded would go first and then there would still be soldiers left behind. But it's pretty clear from this passage that there's no one left in Hawkshire at all. So as they're driving away, Addie and Tobias are flirting. And because of that, Tobias fails to see a pothole and they hit it and blow a tire. Of course, they get out to replace the tire when they realize that, oh no, there's no tire iron. They can't get the tire off. And so Iris, who had, I don't know, she's like, I can run back to town and go find a tire iron. Kind of like insinuating, she like leans really hard on the running practice she had with Roman, but it was like 2 weeks at most. And it's been 2-3 weeks since then. Like, okay. But she says that she's going to run back to town and that she will signal from one of the second story windows if something goes wrong. The town is empty and it's super creepy and sinister, but so far nobody is there. But as she finally finds a garage that is open, all the shelves are empty, but there is one tool and it fell right on the floor. So she'd hear it and turn. And she realizes, oh, this must be an enchanted garage, much like the shop that pushed the food she could afford to her. And so she grabs it and a door opens. And so she decides, like, I should go through that door. Like, the house is trying to tell me something. And so she goes through and basically is led upstairs. She goes to one of the windows and looks back over to where she thinks Addie and Tobias are with the roadster. And she like signals with the lantern she's been carrying. And so Addie signals back and indicates, like, yeah, that's the tool. Because like Iris is holding it up in the window when she hears a door open downstairs and boots start to tromp along the floor. And she's like, did the house betray me? IDK? I don't know what to do. But she blows out her lantern and dives into the closet. Of course, the people downstairs happen to be the platoon that Roman is in. And so they climb up through the door. They're in the house and he's not doing well. He's tired. He is not in the same shape that these soldiers are. And he keeps insisting, I don't think I should be here. But Lieutenant Shane tells him, like, no, you are where you're supposed to be. And one of the soldiers nearby, like, comforts him, like, hey, we're entering through a door on the edge. Like, don't worry, we're not going to be, like, in the center of things. But Roman is like, that doesn't help me at all. But they go into the parlor and he's kind of having a panic attack. And Lieutenant Shane is like, hey, calm down. Why don't you go take a look upstairs, see if there's anybody in the house? And as Roman is doing that, he kind of realizes, like, oh, there's really no risk of anyone being here. It's so quiet and deserted. Like, he just wanted me to feel productive. Like, okay. Of course, Iris is hiding in this closet waiting. Well, she tried to open the window and then gave up and went into the closet, right? And so she is hiding, holding the wrench, thinking that, like, if they open this wardrobe door, I will have to kill whoever it is. Guess who opens the door? Roman. But Iris is so startled to see him, she does not swing. Luckily, he realizes, like, I'm looking at Iris Winnow. And she lowers the wrench. And of course, there's this, like, tension because he's seeing this person from his dreams. And she's realizing that, like, he recognizes her. And so she refers to him by his last name, as she did when they worked at the Gazette. And she's like, Kit. And he tells her, like, he motions for her to be quiet until, like, downstairs they can't really hear anyone anymore. And he asks her, like, do you have a way to get out of here? And she's like, yeah, no, there's a car. Like, I was gonna crawl out the window. He is kind of, like, really polite sounding with her. And so she's like, oh, he doesn't really remember me, like, how he should. But they go to the window. He manages to get it open for her. And she asks him, like, why are you helping me? And he says that, I think you and I were friends because I keep dreaming about you. Then he jokes and he's like, or enemies. And she's like, you and I were never enemies, Kit. Not exactly. Yeah, because they were rivals. Divine rivals. Roman thinks that's kind of weird. And he's like, well, were we something more? And I don't know. She's like, yes, I'm your wife. Oh my God. And it's like Roman reeled as if she had struck him. She jumps out of the window, basically, but he grabs her when she slips and falls, and they're staring into each other's eyes. And she tries to get him to come with her. She's like, come with me, Kit. And he's like, I can't. And he's like, I'll find you again when the time is right. I swear it. And she hands him her wedding ring to remember her by before she drops down off the porch roof and runs into the distance. Right. But as she's going, she is spotted by one of the soldiers who cries after her, halt, right? But she just starts pumping her legs. Roman watching her from the window. Luckily, she makes it to Addie and Tobias, who found the tire iron. So they've already replaced the tire. They did not need the wrench that Iris found. But so she's able to jump into the car, hurting her knee as she does so. And they speed off into the night. But as they're driving, Tobias can see in the rearview mirror glowing lights following them. And Iris realizes that those are the hounds. Like, their skin is so translucent that their hearts filled with magic can be seen through them. And so they're driving as fast as possible. He is pushing this poor car to its limit. And of course, these hounds are magical, and they're so close. When Tobias slams on the brakes, so the hounds just run past them, hit the ground, and then obviously they're confused, like, what in the world? And so Tobias guns it and hits the brake in a way that the car spins, slams into one of the hounds, which, obviously seriously injures it. And then they keep going towards Oath, speeding into the distance. One of the three hounds that was pursuing them is on the ground. Two are still in pursuit, but they hit a curve in the road and the hounds are slowly lost in the distance. which they're described like kind of like zombie dogs, rotten maws, that sort of thing. So pretty disgusting. So Roman is back to typing for Dacre after they have secured Hawkshire, and Dacre is pacing around pretty upset. Lieutenant Shane comes into the room and announces that the hounds have returned, but one of them was gravely injured. That means that Inva's scouts have gotten away. Dacre, of course, is pissed, and he's like, how in the world did an entire army evacuate before we arrived? How did that girl miss getting hit by all of these bullets, right? Because they were shooting at Iris as she ran. And like, how in the world does a motor car outrun my hounds? And everyone's just like, I don't know, sir. And Dacre is basically like, I know how. Someone betrayed me, right? There's a mole. There's a spy. And everyone's trying to like assuage his fears. Like, no, like what? That's impossible. And Dacre's like, no, someone turned on me. And so meanwhile, Roman is like, oh shit, because Dacre is starting to threaten people. He packs up his typewriter as quietly as he can, and he sneaks to the door and manages to slip away with some of the officers that are leaving. As he does this, his leg begins to hurt with this excruciating pain. And so he, tries to hide his limp, coughing a little bit, and makes it to outside where no one can see him, where he is just overwhelmed by all of these horrible feelings. And he starts to remember what happened to him in Avalon Bluff, the poison gas, his leg injury, and he almost has a panic attack as he starts to remember everything. He touches Iris's wedding ring in his pocket. He's just inundated with lines and things that he and Iris said to one another. Luckily, the trio makes it in the roadster to Riverdown on the last of their fuel, and there are tons of soldiers and lorries there, which they have to, navigate around. And it says Inva's brigade had arrived hours ago, it seemed, settling in wherever space could be found. But I'm just kind of I don't know. He's supposed to be this race car driver, and he managed to not make it there faster than the brigade, even though realistically, how long did it take Iris to go find that wrench? 30 minutes? I don't know. The timing doesn't make any sense. Realistically, they would get the wounded out, then they would leave after they've helped the wounded, and then the soldiers that were fine would go. I don't know. But they go find Marisol's sister's house, and they just go inside, and when they go inside the house, they find Marisol and Keegan are already there together. And of course, Iris is injured. They look worse for wear. Marisol is so mad because she's like, Keegan, you told me they were in the procession. And Keegan was like, we had an agreement. And Tobias responds I had a flat tire, but we fixed it in time, but they saw us retreating. And Marisol is so upset by this because it's these are, children comparatively that shouldn't be doing stuff like this. And so Iris heads back after they have a meal to her laundry room. She finds a letter pop up from the wardrobe door. And so the first letter is an answer to those questions that she sent to Roman initially. So the name of her snail, Morgie, her middle name, Elizabeth, and her favorite season, autumn. And she is shocked. He remembers her. He remembers everything. Kind of jokingly, to confirm her identity, he asks her 3 questions. How do I take my tea? To which she responds, you prefer coffee, but you'll drink anything. What is my middle name? Carver, or should I say affectionately, C. And his favorite season is spring because he likes baseball. So these were all things that we learned in the last book. He sends her this long letter back about how he shouldn't have been surprised that he was falling in love with her again a second time, which I didn't really get that. I didn't feel it like I felt it in the first book, unfortunately. But he, writes about how worried he is, and yeah, they're just exchanging little love letters in the middle of a war. But she does ask him to provide any information that he can, and he promises that he'll do whatever she asks him, basically. And so now that Roman remembers everything, he is filled with all the pain of his wound. So his leg injury and his lungs have been scalded basically by that toxic gas. So he coughs and has a hard time breathing, but he needs to hide this from the other soldiers and Dacre, because that's a clue that he's remembered everything. Roman, trying to pretend everything's normal, goes down to Dacre at their promised meeting time to write another article when Dacre asks him to tell him about Iris E. Winnow. And Roman is, he freezes thinking, oh my God, we've been found out. Dacre asks him again, and Roman is like, yeah, I kind of remember her. We worked at the Gazette, right? Why do you ask about her? And Dacre shows him Iris's latest article, The Music Below, the doomed love story between Enva and Dacre. And Roman is like, oh my God, that's the myth I sent her. Right? And so it's like, this is a testament that Dacre has a weakness. Enva is his weakness. And Roman, plays it off like, I've never heard this before in my life. Is it important? And of course, Dacre's pissed. But he phrases it as like, is it important if people believe a lie to be the truth, Roman? And, Roman's like, oh, yeah. Well, I don't remember anything other than like she's low class. You don't need to be threatened by her. But Dacre insists, like, this is a lie that must be answered. You're going to tell my side of the story. And so Roman, has to sit down and start writing this story when Lieutenant Shane bursts into the room saying, we found the grave, sir. And Dacre tells him that it is Luz's grave, the god of harvest and rain, which he says is useless magic. But Roman recognizes like this is magic that humans would find very useful, right? Because the gods are immortal. They don't need to worry about anything. But humanity obviously needs rain and crops. Dacre tells Roman to leave his typewriter, which scares Roman, but they head out to go to the grave. Dacre piles into one lorry and Roman follows Shane to a separate one. Roman starts to pry, like, what did you mean when you said that not all of Dacre's soldiers forget themselves? Lieutenant Shane is like, you should keep that in mind in the days to come. This is where it is confirmed by the lieutenant that Dacre uses the healing thing as a way to gauge loyalty, right? And so if he's asking Roman, hey, do I need to heal your wounds some more? That indicates that Roman, or the soldier, is remembering things and feeling pain. If they don't remember things, if they're still dedicated to Dacre, they will have no pain at all. And so Roman is like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. The lieutenant talks about how I've had this happen to a few of my soldiers and he's taken them and healed them again. And Roman's like, oh, you mean he wiped their memories? And the lieutenant just kind of like looks at him, not saying anything. They keep driving and they talk a little bit more about where they're from. And the lieutenant is like, oh, you went to the rich school, huh? What did they teach you about divinity, mythology? And Roman's just like, oh, the basics. And the lieutenant drops, then I surmise you don't know what happens when a human kills a god versus when a god kills one of their own. And Roman says that when a human kills a god, they simply die. Their immortality comes to an end. And Shane adds, as does their magic. It fades away into the ether. Their power leaves our realm altogether with their death. And Roman is like, oh, I did not know that. But he really doesn't know what to say back to this. But, Lieutenant Shane keeps whispering to him, why do you think the king of Cambria, one of the last 5 divines, buried centuries ago rather than killed? If he had killed them all, magic would have completely vanished from our realm. And he didn't want that. He had the gods enchanted into sleep and buried them instead, so their divine power would continue to trickle through the loam, so we could reap the benefits of it, while being free of meddling, violent gods altogether. Of course, that's a great plan until they wake up, which is why we're here. Roman realizes like Dacre already told him the answer about when a god kills a god, and that they have taken power from one another. And so this obviously is dropping the hint that the reason Dacre is looking for the graves is because he wants to kill the other gods and take their powers. Of course, when they reach the grave, Dacre heads inside, but then later he storms out, tells them to close the grave, and that's it. So all Roman can think is like, either Luz is awake and gone, or he was killed by somebody else. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, I've hit the 50% mark, but it is very late. So I'm going to come back tomorrow and finish the second half of the book. It is the next day. So we're ready for the second half of the book. It is divided into 4 parts. So we are actually already in part 3. Obviously, they are not equally sized parts. But we have Iris and Addie and Tobias and the other soldiers returning to Oath. But it is not what Iris imagined. It's a rainy day, and when they show up, guess who is waiting for them? Chancellor Verlies. So Iris gets out of the car that they're in and starts going towards where the Chancellor is, because Keegan has gone up to start talking to him. Basically, from what Iris can overhear, the Chancellor does not want the soldiers there. He does not want them, quote unquote, infiltrating the city or blocking any of the entrances to the city. So he's basically telling Inva's army needs to get out of here. They're not getting shelter, provisions, hospitals, anything. And of course, Keegan is pushing back against this, and she insists, if anything, please take the wounded. And the Chancellor is not happy about it, but he does eventually agree that the wounded can come into the hospital system within Oath, as long as the rest of the soldiers go out away from the city, into a field, wherever. He just wants them out of the way. However, he does specify that he wants the council to agree to this hospitalization thing. I can't decide all by myself. And while Iris and Addie are standing there eavesdropping, basically, the Chancellor looks up and makes eye contact with them. And she knows from the look in his eyes, he is pissed about what the Ink-Ridden Tribune has been publishing. Marisol, who had evacuated from Riverdown with her sister, turns down Iris's offer to come stay in Iris and Forrest's apartment. She would rather stay close to Keegan. Obviously, they're married. Marisol then references part of that bird book she had given Iris earlier, specifically the albatross, which is a bird that is capable of sleeping while flying, apparently. And they typically fly into the strongest winds of a storm rather than trying to flee, because I don't know really anything about albatrosses, but it implies that they are good at soaring, and so the wind is able to push them into traveling greater distances rather than being wounded if they should try to get out of the way, I guess. And so basically she's kind of hinting that, like, Iris, you need to get to the bottom of what is going on here. So now that Iris is back home and going to return to work at the Ink-Ridden Tribune, she enters her flat, but notices that, like, something's different. It smells different. It looks kind of cleaner. And she notices that there is medicine now on a sideboard by the front door, and it's medicine for Forrest. So she's like, oh, he finally went to a doctor, thank God. But as she enters into the kitchen, she sees a person, and it is not her brother. It is actually Sarah Prindle. What? And they are so shocked to see each other. Sarah is obviously very happy to see Iris and that she's alive and well. But Iris is basically kind of like, why are you here? And Sarah admits that she has been visiting to help Forrest in his sister's absence. And so Iris immediately is like, oh, y'all are an item? But Sarah denies it. But she does kind of imply that, like, well, if he asked me to be together, I wouldn't say no. And so Iris thinks this is pretty funny, though she is also a little uncomfortable. She's been gone for like a few days, maybe a week, and she kind of feels usurped in her own home, basically, by Sarah's presence, but she tries to get over it because she knows Sarah's a good person. Sarah had pure intentions in coming to help Forrest, who obviously is suffering from PTSD and his wounds, etc. Sarah also tells Iris that since she's been gone, things have changed a lot already. There is a curfew, so people aren't allowed after dark, and there are strange people patrolling the city to kind of enforce the Chancellor's rules, but not really. And so this, because while they're kind of working in the Chancellor's favor, but to the public, it seems like they are working their way to being more powerful than the Chancellor, if that makes sense. And this group is called the Graveyard. Spooky, obviously, because the gods have been in graves for the last few centuries. Haha, very funny. And she realizes, like, oh, those are probably the guys that we saw when we went and stole the typewriter. And it's just dangerous. They're advising people not to go out alone because they will attack you if you're out after curfew. It is at this point that Forrest bursts into the house because there has been some gunfire going outside, which is why Sarah brought up the graveyard. And he runs in and hugs Sarah like, oh, I'm glad you're safe. I was worried that you were still out, blah, blah, blah. And then he turns and sees Iris and is like, oh, Iris, you're back. Pretty funny. That was one thing I really liked about this book. I thought the interactions between Iris and Forrest were pretty realistic for a brother and sister. Just funny. While they are eating dinner, Iris just like, she can really see how Forrest cares for Sarah. And this is when Sarah informs Iris that she knows when the messenger with Roman's articles will be showing up. And so they plan out how Iris will go to the office, wait outside, and receive a signal to then follow him when he exits the office. And so the next morning at 9 a.m., Iris is waiting outside the Oath Gazette, looking up at the window to be ready for Sarah's signal. And eventually she sees the signal, right? Sarah presses her handkerchief to the window, and Iris knows that when the next person comes out, it is going to be Val. And so he comes out, looks suspicious because he has a hood up, dressed all dark, looks suspicious. And so she starts following him. And it takes a while. They are going through the entire city. They cross the river to the north side, which is the wealthier part of town. And Iris is horrified to realize that they have walked up to the Kit estate. So Roman's family home, right? So Iris hurries home and immediately shoots off a message to Roman, to which he asks her what has happened. And she tells him, like, there's a door to the underworld in your house. Did you know that? And Roman is like, oh, thank God. I thought it was something bad. Yeah, I knew about it, but, and I mean, I didn't really know about it for sure, but like I had a feeling because of what's going on with Dacre and my family. It's the only thing that really makes sense. So after Roman sends off that response to Iris, Lieutenant Shane starts knocking on the door, and he tells Roman that he has been summoned to speak with Dacre. So Roman packs up his typewriter, expecting it has to do with writing an article, and he heads through the factory, gets to the building where Dacre is staying, but the guards stop him, and they tell him that the Lord Commander is not accepting any guests at this time. But Roman insists that he has been called specifically by Dacre. He was summoned, after all. And so they let him inside, obviously fearing what would happen if Dacre found out that they weren't listening to him, respecting his wishes, etc. And he goes in and finds Dacre asleep. And he's shocked because this is the first time he has seen Dacre in any type of sleepy nature, right? And so he decides to take this opportunity, and he sneaks over to the table and looks at the map of the underworld that is waiting on the table. So he is studying it as best he can, looking specifically for places it reaches Oath. and he can see that, yes, Iris was right. There is a gate in his family estate. He looks around the rest of the city and he can see that there are other doorways, but none of them are activated. So they aren't that cerulean glow or anything. But he tries to memorize what he can. He grabs another paper. You know, he can see the image in his mind and he starts tracing out what he... However, across the room, Dacre is beginning to awake. And so Roman goes as fast as he can, tucks the paper away when Dacre speaks, and he says, "Inva." And Roman is just like, okay. So Dacre, you know, sits forward. He's clearly awake. And Roman, realizing that if he waits for Dacre to see him, it would probably be worse than if he gets Dacre's attention. So he tells him, "My lord, I'm here to finish the article." And Dacre just immediately is like, "Get out." And so Roman grabs his typewriter and flees the room. But a few hours later, Lieutenant Shane shows up again and is like, "You're being summoned." And Roman, of course, drops that he knows it was fake earlier. And he's like, "Oh, a true summoning this time?" But Shane is just like, "Oh, I don't know what you mean. You write an article for him every afternoon as per the norm." And so Roman drops it. But this time, Lieutenant Shane tells him he does not need his typewriter. And so Roman is kind of like, okay. And he puts it down, feeling uneasy because he basically always has the typewriter with him. It's his connection to Iris. But he follows Lieutenant Shane back to Dacre's office. Next to Dacre is a guy with a hood and a cloak. And Dacre tells Roman that he has a new idea to the article that they're going to write. And he insists that they're going to write a response to Iris. So the article she wrote about the myth, Inva's defeat of Dacre, they're going to write a response. And Dacre's plan is to have Roman go and meet Iris in person. His job is to give her a letter from Dacre asking Iris to write for him. Roman is having to play off that he does not know Iris that well, but that he thinks, yeah, she'll probably talk to me. I'll do the best I can. And he is meant to go now. Of course, this means he can't send a warning message to Iris, but Val is going to escort Roman back to the city, and he should arrive by sunrise. So Roman is kind of excited because this means he can see how Val is traveling, though he knows that somehow this is a trick. And this is what gets me, that he falls right into the trap. I'm going to spoil that for you right now. But Dacre also tells him that while he is in Oath, he's going to deliver a second message to his father. And so he's like, okay, cool, great. But he heads down into the underworld with Val, and Dacre has agreed to let Roman stay there for a full night under the guise of reconnecting with his family. And Val takes Roman through the underrealm, and they're going a new way, somewhere he hasn't been before, until they reach a chamber where A, it smells horrible, and B, Val tells him to stop moving. And so Roman immediately is just like, okay. At which point, guess what comes through some of the steam in this room? One of the Eithrols, the wyverns that are horrible and kill everybody. And so Val tells Roman to walk slowly towards the Eithrol, and Roman is like, what the heck? We can't approach that. But he kind of forces himself to move forward, like, how in the world? Are you serious? Like, how can you control that? And Val hauls himself up into a saddle that is already on the creature and basically tells Roman to shut up and get on. So they ride this Eithrol through the underrealm, traveling fast. I didn't that there would be enough room in the tunnels, but I guess there is. And while they are underground, Val is actually controlling the Eithrol using a tiny flute. So not only does he have one of the keys from Dacre, he also has this little instrument on his necklace. And that music is being used to control the Eithrol. And Roman kind of realizes, like, oh, they're controlled by this instrument underground. So as they're flying, Roman realizes that they're actually flying over skeletons and chains. And, this confirms with horror that A, these monsters eat people, and B, Dacre is actually feeding prisoners, workers, etc. to these dragons. is terrible. And it's kind of all coming together. The methods that Dacre is using to win all these battles, using the Eithrals to scare people, drop these bombs and the gas, and then Dacre can just sweep in and take everyone he wants, which obviously is extremely manipulative and horrible. And Roman is like super uncomfortable with the idea, A, because he's a victim of this, and B, because it's so hurtful to people. Finally, they land, and Roman realizes as he looks the Eithral in the eye that the Eithral is also being controlled. Not just with the flute, but he is captive, and pretty sad. This is something that Matilda also noticed in Wild Reverence, but she managed to break the control on one of the Eithrals. So I don't know. That never actually went anywhere either. I don't know. So as they continue walking again, they do reach the doorway into Roman's house, and Roman is surprised to pop out right into the parlor of his home. And so he runs upstairs, and using just a pen and paper, because he obviously doesn't have his typewriter, he writes a message to Iris and puts it behind Dacre's envelope in his pocket. And then he goes to find a telephone. Iris, meanwhile, has been sending Roman test letters, but receiving no response. And while she's sitting and stewing about this, Addie comes up and lets her know that the graveyard has actually started threatening Helena and the Ink-Ridden Tribune as well. So not just the Chancellor, but also this vigilante group. And they are a lot more threatening than the Chancellor. They insist that Helena needs to run all articles by them, and that if she doesn't, some bad stuff is going to happen. And Addie, whose mother is a university professor, apparently says that the same thing is happening at the school. There are a lot of things she's no longer allowed to talk about in her classes, etc. And while they're ranting about this, they are interrupted by one of the assistants in the office who tells her that she has a phone call. So Iris goes to answer the phone and hears Roman's voice. But because of the way he said her voice, she is uncertain. And so she says, yes, this is Iris. And as they continue talking, realizes that he is playing as if they are just acquaintances. And he asks her to meet her at the cafe near the Oath Gazette. And so she tries to take on the same effect and agrees. Like, she will go meet him there. So she runs out, finds him at the cafe where he has ordered a tea tray and a pot of tea and little sandwiches. And again, while still acting like they don't really know each other, invites her to eat, and they chat again, speaking as if they don't actually know each other. He's like, yeah, I haven't seen you since you quit at the Gazette, pretending that he doesn't remember actually becoming a war correspondent, etc. And he tries to drop hints that he still remembers her, saying that she looks well, while bumping her foot underneath the table accidentally, etc. And so she's realizing, like, oh, we're being watched or something, clearly. And Iris is about to go for one of the sandwiches when she realizes that she forgot her wallet, and so she couldn't pay for it. But Roman insists that, oh no, the least I can do is feed you. And so this is a callback to when he did not offer to pay for her sandwich, which pretty cute. This is when Roman tells her that he has a message for her, and he hands over Dacre's envelope with his note tucked underneath it. And he tells her, you should read this later, letting her know not to draw attention to the hidden note, basically. And at that point, he tells her goodbye, and he departs reluctantly, striding away into the city. And so, of course, Iris is sad to see him go, but she rushes to the bathroom so that she can read the letter and the note. And so the letter is from Dacre, and he basically tells her that, I don't know, he's trying to woo her. So it's a very nice letter, but at the end he's asking her, like, come write for me, come write the things that are actually important. Like, we want to heal this country, blah, blah, blah. So it's like very propaganda-y. And she is kind of like, ugh, can't believe this guy. But at that point, she then takes Roman's note and starts reading it, where he tells her that, hey, I've been sent by Dacre to deliver that letter. I can't show that I know you. I'm so sorry, but like, be rest assured that I do remember you. And he tells her that he wants to sneak her into his house, and so that she should come by at night to this side street where there's a gap he can get to from his garden, and he'll sneak her into his house. And I was like, no, what? This is so stupid. Like, what do you mean? Ugh. And so Iris, of course, is like, I'm gonna do it. You know, she's galvanized. She's not gonna go right for Dacre because she knows he's a silver-tongued snake. But also she's like, she doesn't want to wonder about like what could have been. So like she's not gonna live in fear, aka she's gonna go hook up with Roman. And unfortunately, that night when he goes to dinner, Roman is horrified to learn from his parents that there's now a curfew, and the graveyard people are going around being nefarious. And Roman, of course, just has to like play it off like, oh, interesting development. But he's like inside torn up, like, oh my God, what's going to happen to Iris? I can't believe I asked her to do that. Meanwhile, he is noticing some changes in his family. His grandmother, who he doesn't seem to have a good relationship with, who previously is always very isolated from the family in her own wing, not willing to hang out with Ronald, Roman's father. She's there with her dog, which was like a big no-no previously. So it's like he can kind of see like his dad is sort of losing his hold, or his controlling nature is like slipping, probably from stress. And of course, Roman notices that there's this like weird guy kind of in the background all the time. And his mom tells him like, oh, that's your father's associate. Like he takes care of some issues for the business. And of course, Roman is like, what? That guy's not a businessman. Like this dude's buff. So this is the man that was always trailing Iris. And his name's Bruce. We learn his name now. And basically, Mr. Kit just blows Roman off. Like, why do you care? You've never cared about the family or the family business. Like, why are you asking these questions now? And Roman's just like, oh, I just was curious. Sorry. But he does tell them that he will be leaving in the morning. And before Roman is able to go back to his room, Mr. Kit whispers to him, oh, he must be pleased with you if he's letting you stay so long. And Roman is kind of like, yeah. And Mr. Kit's like, good, keep it that way, at least for a little while longer. And Roman is like, what? So I mean, I read this, interpreted it as a hint that like Ronald, Mr. Kit, is planning something that Dacre's not going to like. We'll see what happens. And Roman, of course, is kind of just like conflicted about this because he's like, no matter what happens, like this family's on the losing side. Like if Dacre wins, you know, A, we're enslaved to him, and B, if Inva wins, we were supporting Dacre outwardly, so that's not good. Likewise, if his dad's trying to betray Dacre, like same thing, right? Like no one's going to believe they weren't traitors to Inva. And so he goes upstairs and gets ready for his meeting with Iris, bathing, getting a new outfit, and then he heads out to the meeting place. But he's waiting, and they were supposed to meet at 10, but you know, minutes continue to pass. It's been an hour. She's an hour late and she hasn't shown up. And he is kind of like, when am I supposed to give up? But you know, he's like, no, I'll wait all night for her. And that's when Iris appears. And so they kiss in the moonlight, and they have this really heartfelt reunion, and he leads her to their house where they sneak in. And of course, Iris is kind of taken aback because it's like, dang, your family's rich, right? But they climb up one of the trellises to his bedroom, and she's just like really impressed. Like, wow, you have 6 thesauruses? Which, you know, haha, that's funny because Roman is so pedantic. But she, you know, checks out his wardrobe, like, oh, that's where the letters came in. She looks into his bathroom where she's like, oh, you have a shower. Okay. And he's like, yeah, and it has hot water. And so, you know, they blah, 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 touching each other. They decide to take a shower together. He washes her hair. And I'm just kind of like, his family's not suspicious that he's taken 3 showers today. I don't know. That's fine. But Iris does confirm to Roman that she will not go and write for Dacre. So he doesn't need to worry about that. Of course, they end up moving to the bed, which they were joking about earlier because it's a single bed. And, oh, will that fit both of us? And you can guess what happens. But afterwards, while they're sleeping, Iris dreams of the diner where her mother used to work. Because, of course, when her mother was alive and she was in school, she would wait for her mother to get off work and study at one of the tables. And while she's there, you know, with a notebook in front of her, she looks up and her mother sits down in front of her. And the song is playing. And Iris is kind of like, why do I hear this song every time I see you in my dream? And her mother asks her, do you know who Alzane is? And of course, that is the last king of Cambria. Then the monarchy fell and the chancellors were appointed. So again, none of this information was given to us in the first book, which I feel like it should have been. And because the whole time in the first book, they're trying to tell us how this war is set up, but you don't understand that there are the different, I don't even know, Chancellor sees, like what are they even called? I don't know. It's never said. Clearly, they're not all in Oath. There's only Verlies, but so no other major cities are ever spoken about. Alzane would have been the king that had the 5 gods buried. And so basically in the myths, Alzane is the one who created this lullaby to have the gods sleep. Of course, Iris knows that this is false. It was actually Inva who made the lullaby, but the humans were told that it was their king, that humanity triumphed over the gods. But in this dream, Iris kind of ventures. She's like, I don't think that Inva was ever buried. And her mother is basically, kind of just hints like, that story might have some truth to it, right? Wild theory. As Iris continues to listen to the music, the dream starts to fade. So again, Aster is disappearing and Iris wakes up. And she realizes that a cough woke her up. And so she looks over at Roman and he is bent over himself, hacking, trying to stifle this horrible, wet coughing. And she, you know, asks him if he's all right. And she does offer to go get him a drink, but he's like, no, like, you don't even know how to get through the house. It's fine. I won't worry about it. And she realizes like, oh, the gas did this to you. Like it hurt your lungs. And he's like, yeah, ever since I got my memories back, like the pain of my wounds has returned, just like with Forrest. But he does promise that when the war's over, he will go to a doctor. Because she asks him like if Dacre knows, like, has he picked up that you're in pain now? And he's like, no, and I don't want him to. If he did, then he would realize his influence over me has broken, that I am no longer a captive to him, that I know he only healed me enough to make me pliable and confused. Roman also reveals to Iris that Luz is probably dead, given that Dacre entered his grave and then came out pissed off and didn't say anything to anybody. And that they conclude that, yeah, someone else already killed him. And, you know, it's not a huge leap to think that Alva and Mir, the other 2 gods, are also dead. And Roman believes that it was Inva. So they stay up for a few more hours talking to each other before they start to hear some movement in the house. Roman is pretty sure it's his father because he always rises early to go to his study, but he helps Iris climb out the window and he, you know, escorts her off the estate secretly. He sneaks back into his house, opens his wardrobe, finds his jumpsuit, and changes back. So he goes downstairs to the parlor, intending to return to the underrealm, where instead he finds Dacre in his house. And soldiers are bringing things into the room from the underrealm, and they're setting up a war table. And, you know, Dacre, who's there, is like, you gave your father the letter. Perfect. Awkward. So Iris, who is now fleeing away from the Kit estate, has jumped on a tram and has gone to Addie's house, kind of hoping to get a ride to work. And so she goes in, the family's eating breakfast. They're super cute. Addie has a bunch of little siblings that are like running around being super sweet. But Addie is looking at Iris like, right? And Iris realizes, oh, I'm in my clothes from yesterday. Addie knows something happened. So Iris like takes her into the other room and is like, are you okay? Like what happened? Like you need to tell me something. And Iris is like, oh, no, well, I'll tell you later, but like, you were going to show me something. Addie kind of, ventures like, well, you remember that story I told you a while back at Marisol's house? And Addie takes her downstairs to see her violin that has been hidden into a wall. Iris, having learned about the myth and hearing what Roman told her about the graves and thinking about, All Zane's lullaby, that's that song, they decide, or they start discussing like, but what if we could put Dacre to sleep? Like, do you know the song? Is that something you could learn? And Addie is all for it. She's like, yeah, I'll have to go find the composition, but I know a music professor who would probably have it. Like, I'll take care of it. And right, I'm like, man, Addie is ride or die. But they go upstairs and Iris is shocked to see Tobias. And Tobias apparently has been driving Addie and her siblings to work and to school ever since they returned. And of course, Addie brushes it off like, oh no, he's just being friendly. But Iris, she's picking up what's being put down there. After they drop off the children, Tobias agrees to take Iris out to where the soldiers are camped outside of the city so she can speak again with Marisol and Keegan. Oh, I forgot. While they met in the house, Roman actually gave her that map he drew of the ley lines, so like the underground paths. And she delivers this to Keegan, but she's kind of like, that's helpful, but like, I don't really know what I can do with that information because we're not allowed inside the city. So like, cool, but I'm sorry, I can't actually do anything with this. And Iris, of course, is disappointed, but she understands. Keegan, kind of to make up for it, is like, well, do you remember how when Avalon Bluff was bombed, many of the houses remained standing despite the bombing, while others were just like completely knocked down, which is strange given how heavy the bombing was. And so Keegan kind of suggests that like maybe these ley lines have something to do with that. So Iris is kind of like, okay, so they could be safe places from the bombs, but there are doorways on those ley lines. So even if you hid in the building, safe from the bombs, people could come through those doors, the soldiers fighting for Dacre, and attack you from behind. So Keegan, asks like, how do these keys that Roman mentioned work? Like, can he get us any more information? And Iris, of course, hoping that like he's gone back and now has his typewriter, perhaps they can get more information from him, right? However, as they get back in the car to head to the office, there is rumbling underground, and they realize that Dacre's forces have almost reached Oath, if they're right about the rumbling being from them clearing the ley lines. So Roman, having expected to leave Oath, is now basically under house arrest at his own home with Dacre and his men. He still has not gotten his typewriter back. It is on the war table away from him. Meanwhile, Dacre is going around to their family library and ripping pages out of every book. Basically anything to do with Dacre, he is incinerating. And of course, Roman is upset because like these are heirlooms from his grandfather and he's destroying knowledge, right? All the books are ruined now. But Roman is waiting there, hoping, like, oh, I hope one of these I hope I can get the typewriter. But he eventually has to give up. It is nighttime. And so he goes upstairs to his room where he sees a letter and he's excited. He picks it up and he starts to read it, but he realizes that it is the last letter Iris sent him before she went to be a war correspondent. So back when she didn't know it was Roman. And he freezes, like there's no way this letter should be here. As he's standing there looking at it, Lieutenant Shane steps out of his bathroom. What? So this whole time, Lieutenant Shane has been kind of creepy. And so he comes out. And of course, earlier, Dacre had he's like, someone is a spy. And how did the army know? I don't know, blah, blah, blah. So now Lieutenant Shane is like, I know you're the mole correspondent. And of course, Roman's trying to play it off like, what? I don't know about that. And then Shane brings out another letter, and it is one of the test letters. So this is a test to see if the strike bars E and R are in working condition. E-R-E-E-R-R-E. And Roman, of course, is like, oh, I do that before I start typing because those two keys, you know, sometimes they get jammed and you want to make sure everything's working right. And Shane is like, don't lie to me. Like, I'm not an idiot. I know there are magical typewriters, and I know that you're talking to Iris Elizabeth Winnow, the journalist for Inva. And Roman is just like, how has he connected all these dots? I don't know. Giving up, Roman is like, well, what do you want? And it turns out Shane wants Roman's confession in writing. So Roman has to write him a letter saying that he was giving away information to the enemy. Roman is kind of like, I don't want to do that, obviously. To convince him, Shane starts pulling out more letters with actual evidence that he has been giving away information, and Roman is just kind of like, shit, like I should have been burning these, but I couldn't burn letters written by my precious Iris. And yeah, so basically Roman asks him like, well, what are you going to do with my confession if I write it? And Shane is like, well, I'm going to hold on to it and you're going to do something for me. And so Roman is just kind of like, well, okay, what do you want me to do? It turns out that, you know, Shane knows that tomorrow there's going to be a press conference, and everyone there is invitation only. But Shane wants Roman to take a letter and give it to a man, a red anemone, so this little flower, in his lapel. So he has to find someone with a red flower and give them a message tomorrow. Or Shane is going to throw him to the wolves, basically. And Roman, like, asking, like, well, what does the letter say? And of course, Shane doesn't want him to know. Like, you don't want to know. But after you hand the letter over, get the hell out of here, right? Run away. You know, Roman agrees because he wants to protect Iris and himself. Duh. Shane reveals that he found all of these letters back in Avalon Bluff. So when Roman didn't remember anything, Shane had found the letters hidden in one of the rooms. So because both Iris and Roman had been collecting the letters between each other. Yeah. And so Roman is kind of like, what is Shane getting out of this? Like, he's supposed to be loyal to Dacre, but then why is he having me send a secret message? And like, is he part of the graveyard perhaps? Like, because I don't think he's pro Inva. What can he do? He writes the confession and gives it to Lieutenant Shane. So this press conference is announced, and Iris is actually invited, specifically by the Chancellor, which is strange, but she doesn't really want to go, but Helena asks her like if she's going to go or not, and Iris finally realizes like, well, this will be a good time to give Dacre my answer. Meanwhile, Roman with Dacre and some of the other soldiers, they are traveling together to the location of the event. Roman is just kind of focusing on how he needs to go deliver this message for Shane or be called out for being in the mall, but Dacre insists that Roman sit next to him in the parlor where they're waiting for the event to start. And he asks Roman if he thinks that they're going to be able to convince the people of Oath, so like all the rich people who are showing up, to join Dacre. And Roman just replies, oh, yeah, I hope so. Dacre asks how his meeting with Iris went because he hasn't heard an update. And so Roman, you know, says that it went well, but when asked if he thinks that Iris will accept the offer, he does say that she is quite stubborn, which makes Dacre laugh. And shortly after this, Roman is able to slip away from the conversation and exit the room. He gets to the courtyard of the promontory, and I'm thinking that this is supposed to be the castle on the bridge from Wild Reverence, but I'm not 100% sure because they don't talk about a bridge at all in this or other towers. From the description of the center area, that's what it sounds like. I don't know. So Roman is, you know, filing through all of these people, trying to find someone with a red anemone pen, and he can't find them. And he's like getting increasingly more stressed, right? And as he's looking around, he sees Iris and is horror struck that she is there because Shane warned him that he would want to get the hell out of Dodge after handing over that letter. And so he sees Iris talking to a soldier of Dacre's and knows like he can't go up and say anything to her because that would blow his cover. And so he's like, psychically trying to like beg her, like, look at me, turn around, Iris. But she does not. And that is when Dacre comes out onto the stage. So Roman knows he has run out of time. He failed at the task Shane gave him, and he needs to get out. So as Dacre starts giving his speech, Roman opens the note, and it says, "A blast alone won't do. You must sever the head." And he realizes that Shane is planning to be part of an assassination of Dacre. And so a blast, there's going to be an explosion, and he, basically decides, fuck it, I'm going to go save Iris. And so he's making his way towards her when someone grabs him and pushes a gun into his back, forcing him to leave with him. And it ends up being Bruce, his father's associate. And of course, he, is immediately like, oh, is this guy part of the graveyard? What's going on? Like, did my dad send him? And Bruce confirms, like, your father wants you home. This is not a safe place, which is kind of hinting that his dad knows what's going down. But Roman insists, like, my wife, I need to get back to her. And Bruce pauses because he knows about Iris. And that is when the explosion happens. And Roman is thrown to the ground. So dazed, Bruce hauls Roman up and drags him out of the building, basically away from that courtyard. Meanwhile, Roman is calling Iris, but he can't see her. And Bruce, in frustration, knocks Roman out with a smack to the head, throws him over his shoulder, and they flee. He does wake up later in the vehicle, which is racing down the roads, bouncing off cobblestones, and Roman ends up throwing up all over the back of the car, much to Bruce's chagrin. But they make it to the Kit estate, and Roman is surprised that Bruce gets him out of the car and starts dragging him through that secret path through the garden that he had shown Iris, which now he realizes, oh my God, everyone knows about this. FML. They managed to sneak into the house. Roman is trying to figure out what's going on. Like, were you trying to kill everyone there? Like, that was a huge explosion. What's going on? And Bruce is like, no, ask your father. But he does feel pity for Roman and says, well, since you were there, I'll say this, no, only him. So they only wanted to kill Dacre, even though clearly many people were injured. And Roman reveals, like, a bomb alone won't kill him. And Bruce tries to figure out, like, how do you know this? But Roman doesn't want to reveal the whole letter situation. So he just tells him it takes more than that, just kind of saying it awkwardly. And he asks Bruce, like, please go back for my wife. And Bruce says, Miss Winnow will be fine. And of course, Roman is like, wait a minute, I didn't tell you her name. What's going on? And Bruce is like, your dad tried to pay her off after you disappeared. And of course, hearing this, Roman is pissed. He's like, how dare my father overstep in that way? And so he storms into the house, and there are still soldiers around. And now there are like piles of crates with caution written across them. And he just storms past them, even when they try to stop him. And he makes it to his father's study, where he finds his father, who is clearly stressed, tells him to shut the door. And then he sees what happened. Like, Roman's in bad shape. He's scraped up. There's blood. Clearly he's vomited partially on himself. Mr. Kit asks his son, like, what happened to you? And Roman, instead of answering, just immediately demands, like, what are those crates out there? Is it more of that gas? Like, but Mr. Kit tells him, no, it's not. But then he asks, like, but has it been taken care of? And Roman, of course, is like, what are you talking about? And his dad is like, is he dead? And Roman has to tell him that he doesn't know. And Mr. Kit, is now even more stressed because Dacre lived, that he's going to figure out it was them. Meanwhile, there is a cold draft. Like, when Dacre shows up, everything gets kind of chilly and the walls start to tremble, and, they can hear things shaking. And so Mr. Kit demands that Roman crawl under the desk and hide. But Roman tells him it's too late. And this is like the first time you see that, like, Mr. Kit actually cares about Roman. He says, do as I tell you, son. I won't lose you to this. And it was like, his dad exits his study and closes the door behind him. And Roman is able to overhear Dacre approach his father, who is furious. And he has all the officers and soldiers who remained behind to line up in the hall. And so everyone is lining up, and Roman can hear presumably Dacre pacing back and forth. He managed to look through a crack in the doorway to see that all these people are lined up, and Lieutenant Shane is there. So quickly, Roman throws the note into the fire so that there's no evidence left, and watches as Dacre threatens to break the arm of one of the soldiers. So he's like, either you confess or you tell me who betrayed me, or I'll break your arm. And the guy's like, obviously doesn't know. He's like, I truly don't know. I'm wholly devoted to you, my lord, blah, blah, blah. But Dacre doesn't believe him. He's like, I'm going to give you one more chance. Roman opens the door and walks in and calls for Dacre, who pauses and is like, I thought you were dead. And Roman says that, no, I was on the outside of the courtyard. Like I was on the edge of the courtyard. So the blast didn't hurt me, but I didn't know what to do. So I just came home since I assumed you would return here. And Dacre is like, okay. Dacre demands to know, like, do you know who betrayed me? And Roman kind of makes eye contact with Shane because he can tell like Shane is about ready to throw him under the bus when he says, no, I don't think anyone here is a traitor. We have been with you, Lord. We have served you below as well as above. We know your true nature, your power, your magic. If one of us attempted to kill you, do you think we would be foolish enough to use a bomb? And so Dacre, who had grabbed onto Roman, lets him go and tells everyone to meet him in the war room in a few minutes. And so like everyone, you know, gives a sigh of relief basically that they got out of that situation. And Shane brushes Roman's shoulder as he passes by, which he's not really sure if he should take that as a sign of camaraderie or a warning, but he didn't really care. So he goes back up to his room, changes into clean clothes, and goes downstairs where he finds everyone in the war room, and there is his typewriter. So Dacre tells him to start writing or get ready to type, and that's when Roman notices that on the table is the necklace from around Captain Landis's neck, and he realizes that Captain Landis would have been the closest person to Dacre, and so he, you know, unmistakably, like he had to have died in the explosion. Roman gets ready to type, and that's when Dacre reveals that they're writing another letter to Iris Winnow. So Iris, meanwhile, survived the explosion. She lost her shoe, her dress is torn, her legs are bleeding because she fell, and, you know, the crazy thing is that the soldier she was talking to stepped in front of her, and he was the one who caught most of the blow. So she survived because he died, which is sad. So she's like stumbling through the alleyways, trying not to be seen by the patrolling graveyard members. And she's reflecting on the event before the explosion and how immediately Dacre's speech was just so conceited and like kind of double-faced feeling. She didn't trust a single word he was saying, even though he was saying positive sounding things. And she could sense that like the people around her were being drawn into this, to her horror. And she just, you know, she's like, this is the beginning of the end. Like, what is life going to be like when Dacre is in charge? When the explosion happened and she was thrown to the ground, when she got up, she made eye contact with Dacre, who was rightfully, I mean, he almost got exploded, furious, and she ran away as fast as she could. But, you know, Iris, injured, it's late at night, she's scared. She makes it to the library where she was able to sneak into the foyer before the doors locked. And she, you know, is trying to find a hiding place so that one of the guards doesn't find her, but she realizes that she's trailing blood and finally gives up. She can hear a guard coming and she's just like, I'll just deal with it as it comes, right? Like, I don't know. I'm stuck, right? There's no way I can hide now. But instead of the guard she was expecting, it is a woman in a guard's uniform. She feels familiar, but she also feels strange, and she has no weapon and no name tag. But the woman, instead of like trying to capture her or tell her she's trespassing or something, says instead, "You're hurt. Let me help you." And Iris is like, okay, takes her hand, and the woman takes her back to the security guard's office. and helps remove some of the broken glass from Iris's foot, which is part of why she was bleeding, helps her bandage her knees, etc., gives her a cup of tea to calm down. And as they are talking, the woman says that she hasn't worked at the museum very long, but she likes it. And Iris asks her like if she has any family, and the woman says, no, it's just me. I keep my company with music. And Iris asks her if she plays instruments, but the woman says no longer. And, you know, I'm not sure why Iris is like drawn to ask all these questions, but she's just kind of feeling awkward, I guess. And the woman, after giving her the tea and finishing with the bandaging and stuff, like asks her like, have you ever slept in a museum? And Iris is like, no, I should probably stay awake. And the woman says, it's fine. You're safe here. Like, let yourself dream. Don't worry about it. And so Iris drifts off to sleep. And so she wakes up in the museum and she is walking through the foyer, but she sees the guard next to her, except now she's wearing a dress instead of the uniform. And the woman asks her to follow her. And Iris is just like drawn behind this woman. And they stop at a glass display with a sword in it. And Iris is like, oh, I've seen this sword the last time I was in the museum. And the woman says, yes, when you stole the first alouette, so the first typewriter. And Iris is just like, oh, yeah, I did steal it. Haha. Why are you showing me the sword? And the woman tells her that it is an enchanted weapon given to King Draven centuries ago. And he carried it into battle against the gods and killed many divines with it. But the plaque says something different. I think it said like it can't hurt anybody. It was just like it's supposed to be a symbol, but the woman tells her like that's a lie, that a lot of their history has been purposefully buried. All the books in the library with their pages torn out, etc. And so Iris asks her like, well, what is the sword enchanted to do then if the plaque in like the history is a lie? And the woman tells her that it can cut through bone and flesh like butter if only its wielder offers the blade and the hilt a taste of their blood first, a sacrifice to weaken yourself and wound your own hand before striking. They continue to walk, and all of a sudden one of the hallways becomes really narrow, rocky, dank, and cold. And Iris is confused because she's like, I didn't think the museum had anywhere like this. And the woman tells her, oh, no, it's not the museum. This is my husband's domain. But, you know, they're not going to meet him. She is just showing her a door, and she wants her to pay attention to the floor because it is at a slope, and that's going to guide her through the maze, essentially. And so they keep walking, and the woman is like telling Iris not to like focus too hard or it will break the illusion, the dream. And so they just keep walking, looking at things. And the woman tells her, like, when I lived here, there were no locks. I could come and go anywhere in the realm as long as I didn't return to my life above. My husband thought he was granting me freedom, but it was a cage. And the woman then reveals, like, you know, at the heart of the realm, my music was strongest, perhaps because of the risk, but you will need a key to unlock this door. And so Iris, you know, is like, what key? Where can I get a key? And the woman doesn't answer, but she opens this door and they are outside on a hillside. And the woman tells her that, you know, you asked me if I was from Oath earlier, and I am not. Once I lived here, I could go anywhere I wanted. I had freedom. That was my domain, and yet I surrendered it when I exchanged a vow with Alzane, all because he feared my growing power. Since then, I've been beholden to Oath. I cannot leave the city, or else I would have met him in the west when he woke. So if you haven't picked up on it yet, this is Inba. And that is why she has not been at the war front. She has simply called people in Oath to go to war, because that's where she is. Iris is like, meet who? And the woman says, Dacre. He can mend what he breaks, but I am music and knowledge, rain and harvest. I am nightmares and dreams and illusions. And if he were to kill me as he longs to do, then he would take all my magic into himself. There would be no end to his power, and he would feast on mortal fear and service. He wants to conquer this realm. He wants you to worship him and him alone. And Iris is basically like, well, if you have all of these powers, why can't you fight him? Like, why are you making us fight him? And Inba reveals that when she took the power of the other three gods, it weakened her own powers. So her hands are essentially, they're like swollen, arthritic, painful. It hurts her to play music now. And this is what I didn't get, because in Wild Reverence, they talk about stealing each other's powers all the time. People are doing it constantly, murdering each other left and right, and no one has any repercussions for that. Do you know what I mean? Like, I guess, yeah, she did 3 at a time, but it's implied that many gods have done that before, you know? I don't know. So I was just kind of like frustrated. Like, it's not consistent with Wild Reverence that taking powers would cause pain. And also in Wild Reverence, one of the side characters was a human who becomes immortal after her death because the god of war was in love with her and begged death and fate to intervene and save her life. And part of her power was to stop that transfer. And to do it, she does give 2 stars to Matilda and then 2 stars to Bade so that they can keep their powers even if they're murdered. I just didn't get it. Like, I don't know. It felt super convenient because it's like she doesn't actually use it for anything. Like, I guess it's so that like war doesn't continue, but Bade survives the story and apparently died somewhere between Wild Reverence and Divine Rivals, I guess before Inva put everyone to sleep. I don't know. I don't get it. Like, it doesn't feel like these 2 realities actually go together, despite the fact that they are both referencing the same world and the same power mechanisms and magic system, you know? I don't know. So basically, Inva is like, it hurts to play and I can help you defeat Dacre, but I cannot do it myself. Part of my vow was that I would not end his immortality. So like, I physically cannot kill him. It is impossible for me. That is why a human needs to do it. Plus, you know, if I die, he will get all the magic and he'll be the last one. And then when someone eventually is strong enough to kill him, a human, to kill the last the last god, then all magic will be gone. So like, it's in your best interest to kill him now before he kills me, basically is what she is trying to say. And Iris, of course, is upset thinking about like the life that Inva lived in the underrealm and thinking of like how, you know, the enchantments, even though she was uncomfortable with a lot of like the enchanted buildings and stuff, she recognizes how empty life would be without that sort of thing, like without her typewriter. She never would have met Roman, etc. Like these things bring a lot of joy to humans, even though there is also some pain and grief associated with magic. This triggers in her mind her memories of Roman, which is upsetting the dream, right? She's been walking through this dream kind of like in a trance. And so remembering him, the dream begins to end. You know, Iris desperately tells Inva, like, I don't want you to die and I don't want magic to fade, but I am not as strong as you. He will surely defeat me. And Inva tells her that, you know, she's capable of more than she knows. Like, humans are full of so much power that they don't recognize in themselves. Iris wakes up in the real world and the woman guard, Inva, is gone. So she gets up, she goes to the sword, and she takes it out of the display and leaves the museum. Iris has gone to the ink-ridden tribune. She has the sword on her desk and she finds Helena there. Helena has stayed over the whole night, and Iris tells her that, you know, she's fine. She survived the event. Helena this whole time has been drinking in her office. Like, I killed her. She died there. And so Helena's very happy to see her, but then is also like, oh, you have a sword. You stole that from the museum. And, you know, Iris asks her to hide it in her office. As they do, Tobias storms into the office and he says that he has a letter for Iris. And it is from Mr. Ronald Kitt asking Iris to visit the Kitt estate. And of course, you know, Iris and Helena both know this is probably some sort of trap, but she asks if someone wants to go with her, and Tobias offers to drive her there and to wait for her to exit. Iris, shortly after that, arrives at the Kitt estate for her meeting with Mr. Kitt. Of course, you know, as they pull up in the car, the gates do not open, but as Iris approaches it, the gates do open. So she realizes, like, she is meant to go in alone. She could not even even if she wanted to have Tobias go in, he could not. But she heads to the door, knocks on it, and Mr. Kit answers, which is strange since they're wealthy and they have staff. The butler presumably should have been opening the door, or a footman or something. And so she's kind of like already perturbed, like this is strange, but she follows him into the house and they go to the parlor where there's tea waiting for them. And she is surprised to see Dacre sitting there on the sofa. And so he has her join him, and Roman also comes into the room. So Iris, she frowns, she pretends that they're just acquaintances, right? Keeping up their story. And Iris says, yeah, he was my colleague. He brought me that letter. And so Dacre is like, well, I saw you at the event yesterday. And, why did you run away from me? And she's like, excuse you? And he's like, I saw you. I was coming to help you and you ran away. And she's like, I didn't feel safe. Like there was an explosion. Dacre is kind of like, so what did you think of my speech? And she says, like, you're saying exactly what those people wanted you to say. Basically saying like, yeah, you're lying out of your ass, weirdo. But Dacre just keeps pushing her like, oh, well, you disapprove of what I've said? Like, what have you heard? And she's like, well, I've heard a lot of things about you from when I was reporting on the front lines. Again, being like, yeah, I know that you are lying. Like, I know that you're bringing death and destruction, even though you gave this whole big speech about healing and restoring the country and blah, blah, blah. And so, her and Kit are ignoring each other. So Dacre finally asks her if she's going to write for him, and she tells him no. And Dacre tells her she's a hypocrite because she is writing for Inva, I guess. Basically, Dacre gives her this long speech about how worthless humanity is and that, immortals don't even care about them. So it's like, why we killed, our own spouses, our siblings, our own children to survive. It was cutthroat. Like, why do you think she would help you? Like, humans are made to worship us. So why are you hoping really for anything? It's kind of what he's getting at. And Iris is, sitting there trying not to say anything. And he keeps going on about how Inva's a coward hiding, and that like she hasn't shown y'all anything. She hasn't done anything for you. But at least I've shown you that even though gods are cruel, we can also be merciful. And he's referring to his healing of the injured soldiers. Iris is just like, I'm not a devout person. I've only ever written for myself. At this point, Dacre tells Roman to give Iris the typewriter, and he, demands that she start writing for him. But Iris tells him that she's not going to. And finally, after a back and forth, Dacre says that like, fine, Roman, put her hands on the keyboard. And of course, Roman is like, I don't want to. And Iris is like, if he touches me, I'm going to break down. So she puts her hands on the typewriter and says, fine, I'm ready. So it is now evening by the time Iris is done and can leave the estate. The streets are empty. There's litter everywhere. Stores are already closed. It's so awkward. And this is because the Chancellor was injured in the explosion. So he's in the hospital and people are now in mourning, even though he's kind of a dick, but that's fine. Tobias is actually driving her not home, but to the print factory that prints off all the newspapers because she has to try and squeeze something in to the next issue of the Inkridden Tribune the following morning. And so she goes inside and tells Tobias like, hey, you need to bring Helena here because they're not going to listen to me. And so she goes inside and she tries convincing the secretary like, hey, I need to meet with the boss, the head printer. And the secretary is just like, no, it's too late for edits. He's not going to meet with you. Like, you don't have an appointment. Come back tomorrow. Stymied, she, waits for Helena to arrive. As she does so, she is looking at the letter that she had to write for Dacre. And it says the following: as I am merciful, I will give you each a choice. Those of you who would join me in this new era of restoration and justice, come to safety. Come to my side of the city before the clock strikes noon today. Cross over the river to the northern side of Oath, where my soldiers will be waiting to welcome and shield you. No harm will come to you and your own should you make the crossing before midday. For those of you who refuse my offer and remain behind, south of the river, I cannot offer you protection. And as I am a god who upholds justice, given what was done to me in the Green Quarter, you must prepare to face the consequences of your actions. So basically, he has said anyone south of the river is going to die tomorrow, unless you come and bend the knee to me. Helena shows up finally, and she manages to convince the secretary to let them speak to the head printer. And he doesn't want to print this, but she convinces him by letting him read the letter. And he's like, well, shit, fine. I'll halt production and like you come help me, Helena. Like we need to make the new linotype, the print plate thing. And Iris then, inspired, asks him if the Gazette has gone to print. And he said, no, I actually printed after the Tribune. And she's like, okay, well then can you hold that too? And Helena is like, I can't hold another newspaper's production. Like Zeb Autry's gonna be pissed. But you know, the head printer, Lawrence, is like, well, the world's ending tomorrow anyways. Like, what's Zeb gonna say? Like, what is he gonna do? And so they agree to also hold the Oath Gazette. And Iris tells him why. Like, she's doing it to save people, right? And so luckily, Iris takes out the map that Roman had given her, and she's comparing it to a map of the town with Tobias. And so together they work as quickly as they can to find places that they know are enchanted and potentially lay on the ley lines. And she writes kind of a coded message for the Oath Gazette. It is going to look like an advertisement on the front page telling them to go to another page inside. And then that page is going to have a list of addresses where people can find safety with a warning like, go here to the magical buildings to survive, right? And luckily they get it done. Helena tells Iris to leave. And so she goes back to the office to get the sword. But while she is there, guess who shows up? Kit. And he just wanted to make sure that she was okay. And throwing caution to the wind, they start making out and they get busy on her desk. I know. I'm like, what is wrong with these people? Like an hour later, you know, they're talking and Iris is like, yeah, you're right. She did kill the other gods. She has their power, but like she made a vow that she can't kill him. So it's like, we have to kill him. And Roman is like, oh, okay. But they make a plan to try and get a key from Dacre. And then Iris and Addie, who would be playing the violin, will go meet Roman outside his family home, at least to give her the key. And then they'll go find a door to try and get underground so that they can play Dacre to sleep again and behead him, kill him for real. And so they go back outside and Roman walks him to her house because this could be the last time that they are able to see each other, to spend time. And Iris tries to get Roman to go inside and meet Forrest, but he says that he has to go back. And, you know, he walks home without her. Like he walks to his house. Iris, you know, meanwhile, goes into her house where she finds Forrest, who is super stressed because he knew that she went to the event. And she tells him like, no, I'm fine. Like, I'm just a little scratched up. It's okay. And she tells him that she has news for him, but he also has news for her. So she lets him go first. And he tells her that, you know, he went to the doctor and the doctor basically told him that there are still bullet fragments inside him. That's why he isn't healing correctly. And so they're going to be able to do surgery the next week. And so Iris is like, oh, because the hospital is on the south side of town. So it is going to be destroyed in the bombing the next day, presumably. And so she has to tell him, like, we're probably all going to die tomorrow. Like, Dacre is going to bomb the city to shit. So he, of course, is like, oh, darn. Yeah, I don't know. It's so sad. They have like a bonding moment. He reads to her from a book and she ends up falling asleep on his shoulder. The last night, they're really like together as family. So there's no need for Roman to sneak back into the estate because he didn't leave secretly or anything. He had actually asked Dacre, hey, can I go trail Iris to make sure that she does what you say she will? And so of course he comes in to be like, yeah, she delivered the article. It's being printed. Don't worry about it. And Dacre is just like, why did you steal from me? And Roman, of course, is like, what? I didn't steal anything. And Dacre's like, I've been good to you. Like, I've given you more freedom than anyone else. Like, search him. And so Roman is just kind of like, okay. And of course they don't find anything on him, And so Dacre's like, where's the key? What did you do with the key? And Roman, of course, is like, I don't know. I don't have the key. Like, it was on the table. Anyone in the room could have taken it. I didn't take it. And Dacre is just like, how many other lies have you told me? And as he says that, Val steps into the room because guess what? Val was tailing Roman. So he saw Roman go into the Ink-Ridden Tribune office and spend an hour getting at it with Iris. He was probably spying on them from the window. And then he watched her walk him home, or watched him walk her home. And then they kissed outside. And he's like, they had a really amorous exchange there. And of course, Dacre is like, well, then I guess Iris E. Winnow is Iris Elizabeth Winnow. And bam, spreads out all the letters from Lieutenant Shane that show Roman is guilty of being the mole. And he's just like, this is it. This is the end. Shane is just standing there, kind of like playing it cool, acting like he's not moved at all. Roman finally is like, okay, whatever. I'm not going to call Shane out. Like, I know that he did this for his own survival, which, like, okay, ethical king there. But Mr. Kit, comes in at this moment and is trying to, like, save Roman. Like, please, my son is sick. Like, as you can see, like, don't do this to him. And Roman is just like, no, I betrayed you because I love her. And Dacre is like, excuse you? He's mad, mainly because he's never been loved. And the person he thought he loved stabbed him in the back. And Roman goes on this, like, long thing, like, you never healed me. You didn't save me. Iris saved me. Like, she's the meaning of my life. Like, blah, blah, blah. So Dacre has soldiers grab Roman and take him below. But before they do, Dacre puts Roman to sleep. So, like, he's just swallowed by darkness. Iris now wakes up suddenly at home feeling uncomfortable. Something is going on. But then she hears something in the kitchen. So she gets up and sees Inva. And so she, like, asks, like, are you really here or am I dreaming? And the goddess doesn't say anything, but Iris is like, okay, then it's a dream. Why are you here? Iris is thinking about it and she's like, well, how many dreams have you walked? How many people have you gone to? Why are you here? And, it's revealed that she went to Addie. She went to Roman, sort of, except she was just sending him his memory so he would remember Iris. And she is like, yeah, no, I inspired a lot of soldiers to go to war. I visited your friends to make sure they knew the music. Like, I can't leave, but I can use Alva's magic to visit people in their dreams. So, like, I was able to help some of these soldiers escape from Dacre after they were captured. And even though she already basically explained this, Inva explains again why she could not kill Dacre herself, which I feel like they already knew this and already talked about it, but that's fine. Inva is kind of like, even though I promised not to hurt him, I can still lie. So, like, I've lied to everyone. I lied to Alzane. I lied to Dacre. I promised Alzane that I would kill the other 4, but I did not tell him I could only kill 3. And, I have been stuck in oath ever since. While this conversation is going on, Iris begins to hear her name in Forrest's voice. And so she, before she wakes up, she, like, asks Inva, why have you been showing up as my mother? And, Inva is like, well, you wouldn't trust me otherwise. So, which, that's sad. She wakes up and Forrest tells her that there is some noise, and they listen carefully and they can hear that someone is picking the lock on the front door. And so Forrest has her go hide in the kitchen, and he wants her to run if something happens. So someone breaks into the house and they come inside sneaking until they run into Forrest. And so they start fighting. They're crashing into furniture, throwing things, the lights flickering because the lamp's rolling across the floor. And Iris can hear Forrest cry out in pain. And so she is trying to figure out what to do when the intruder asks, where is your sister? And so Iris is like, fuck this. She doesn't actually say that, but she grabs the sword and goes to confront the intruder. But before she does, she has to cut her own palm. And she can see that it's Val, who she knows brought Roman's articles, right? That's how she knows him. And so she pulls her sword waiting for him, and he tries to jump at her while distracting her, and she lowers the sword until it sinks into him. So he, is stuck through, horrified, and falls dead to the ground. And so Forrest is like, who in the world is that? She's like, it's one of Dacre's men. We need to leave. And of course, Iris is like, oh my God, I killed somebody. But they grab the sword, grab what they can, and they roll up to Addie's house. And so Addie's family is not shocked to see her. Mr. Atwood just opens the door and lets them right on in, doesn't even question the fact that they're so beat up, and Iris has a huge sword. They are eating biscuits, and they knew what was coming, so that's why everyone is awake, trying to figure out what they're going to do tomorrow. And they've decided that they are going to go to their friend's house, the McNeils, the next day, because they live in an enchanted home, and that hopefully they can save their children and the Lilac the cat from the last book. She's been alive this whole time. Addie notices that Iris did use the sword because she had to bandage her hand up, and she reveals that she got a key off of Val's body. And so she's like, we have all we need to go to the Underrealm. And Iris admits, I spoke to Roman and he wants to go with us. But her and Addie agree that they can't risk trying to go get him. So even though she might never see him again, Iris decides that they will not go find Roman before going underground. So meanwhile, Roman, who has been unconscious for most of this time, wakes up in the Underrealm and realizes that he is chained where the Eithreal live. Around him are all these other chained up bodies and remains, and he's like, oh my God, he's feeding me to the Eithreal. And I don't know, while this was stressful, because you're like, oh my God, what if Kit dies? It's like we just keep getting scenes of him laying there chained up being stressed. He doesn't do anything really for the rest of the book. So I'm not going to go into much detail about those scenes because they don't really contribute anything. He's just observing what's happening underground from one spot where he can't leave from. But anyways, the next morning, Iris and the Atwoods are getting ready to leave. So people are packing things up. It's crazy out there. People are trying to evacuate, and they're shocked because some people are going north, but then some other people are coming south, and some people are just staying and trying to figure out where to go. And Forrest comes up to Iris and tells her that he wants to go find Sarah Prindle, his girlfriend. And so Iris gives him a copy of the Oath Gazette with a list of addresses and tells her we're going to this address, the McNeil's house, and we'll be waiting for you there, right? But just in case, here are the other addresses. And Forrest gives this heartfelt moment where he's like, did I ever tell you how proud I am of you? Because it's she's done all this stuff to try and save other people, even at the risk of her own life. And it's just yeah. So they leave the house. Addie also has taken her violin and is wearing it strapped to her. So some people are looking at her what the fuck? Those are illegal. They are making their way through town, except it's a struggle. It is so crowded in the streets that when they finally make it to the McNeils, they are horrified to discover that they are gone. They have fled, presumably to the north. They know that that's the only option because all the gates out of the city have been closed and are guarded by Dacre's men. So no one can escape the city. They have to choose north or south. Heartbroken that the McNeils are gone, they decide to go to the museum, and they leave a note for Forrest and Tobias that, we're at the museum, come find us. But it takes over an hour for them to get to the museum, and it is so crowded. No more people can fit inside the building, essentially. They are stuck at the steps. And so, they are desperate. Where are we going to go? When Addie suggests the cafe. So this is the cafe that Iris met Roman. She met Sarah. She met Addie. It is one of the enchanted buildings. And so they, decide to head there. But unfortunately, there's no way to leave a note. So Addie says, I'm going to stay back at the museum to tell them where we're going. And so, Addie promises, I'll get there before noon. Don't worry. I will get there as fast as possible. And so Iris goes with the rest of the Atwoods to the cafe, and they make it there, where they find the cafe is still running and giving out free cups of tea as kind of an FU to Dacre. And so the family sits down and they're trying to distract the children from what's going on. So they're drinking tea, eating biscuits. They start like playing card games, and they keep looking out for Addie, but she isn't showing up. You know, minutes keep ticking by, and Iris is so scared because, like, what if Addie doesn't come back? She's the one who has to play the violin. And so Mr. Atwood says, like, well, I'm gonna go run. We have like 5 minutes. I'm gonna go run and see. But as he gets ready to go, Addie and Tobias appear in the distance, along with Tobias's parents, but there's no Forrest and Sarah. And Iris is just so disappointed. And, you know, they tell her, like, we stayed as long as we could, but Forrest and Prindle never showed up. Iris is sure, like, they must have sheltered somewhere else. And so there's 2 minutes left. So everyone gets seated, and Addie decides that she has to tell her parents what's going on. So she tells them that they are going to go to the Underrealm and play music to try and kill Dacre. And of course, the parents are like, what? Iris, while this was going on, has managed to find the door, and it is the bathroom door. The Atwoods and Tobias take them to the door where they say farewell, and Addie and Tobias basically confirm their love for each other, and they say goodbye. Iris and Addie head into the Underrealm. So then there's this chapter where it's just snippets of all the side characters. So there's a scene of Tobias getting along with the Atwood siblings and distracting them with some toy cars that he brought. And his like parents are proud of him, like, for distracting the children from what could be their impending doom. And then there's Helena at the Inkran Tribune, who basically is like, the captain goes down with their ship. Meanwhile, she's drinking whiskey and smoking it up, even though she quit smoking earlier in the game or in the book. And then it cuts to Marisol and Keegan back outside of the town, knowing that they're going to watch Oath fall. And then they cut to Forrest holding Sarah's hand, and they are running through the streets trying to find shelter because she wanted to go home and get her father. But it was just so chaotic. They didn't even make it to her neighborhood before the bombs started to drop. And it's such a sad page. She just keeps saying that she needs to get back to her father, and there are only a few more blocks, but the bombs have started dropping and they're hiding behind cars. And he sees an open door and he grabs Sarah and they start to run, but he looks down and sees that his shadow grows 2 wings, and he knows that's not his shadow. And he keeps pushing her. She's like, Forrest, my dad. And he's like, we're almost there. Keep running. And it's like, they were 3 strides away from the door when there was a startling bright light, as if a star had fallen, a pressure in his ears, a boom that he felt in his chest. Even then, Forrest never let go of her hand. And I was like, oh my God, he died. Ugh. And like, while I was reading it, like, I even stopped my husband and I was like, oh my God, I think the brother died. He's like, what are you talking about, Taylor? Ugh, so sad. And it just feels so unearned. I don't know. It's like, why? Usually, like, when stuff like that happens in a book, I feel like, you know, the tragedy makes the story feel fulfilling. And while, like, I feel so bad for Forrest and Sarah, it doesn't ultimately feel like their deaths serve the story. Like, me being sad about them dying doesn't make the ending feel good. When usually, you know, even though it's sad, it feels like a complete circle. I don't know how to explain this. It just felt like that was for shock value because it doesn't actually impact anything. Usually the tragedy is a catalyst for something, and this is happening basically off page for the main characters, and they don't even learn about it until everything's done. So it just upset me. Like, it felt wasted. Anyways, Iris and Addie are now underground. They're in the Underrealm, and she's trying to retrack her path from the dream. And, you know, they notice these like crystals in the wall that glow with light and stuff. They're like, I wonder if these are like road signs, sort of, or a map. And yeah, in Wild Reverence, they talk about it. The colors change depending on where you are. So you can tell by how the colors are changing, like which direction you're going and stuff. Okay. And as they are going, they can hear boots. And so they manage to hide behind some rock, and soldiers are marching by. So they know that soldiers are now going into oath to attack people, basically. And luckily, they aren't caught. They wait until the soldiers are gone, and then they continue down the path. The path is a bit different. It's like overgrown with vines and thorns and stuff, but she knows like that she has to go towards that smell and a certain type of light. So Iris knows like we're almost there, and they keep pushing through until they find the heart of the underrealm. So there's that horrible steam that smells terrible, and now like these vines are dying off as they go into the chamber. She looks around trying to find a landmark so that she knows where to go back to go home. She's also been dropping crumbs of a scone, so very Hansel and Gretel here. And you know, as they're like making their way down to the central like platform area, they can hear screaming in the distance, and they're like wondering basically if like they're going crazy, like is that an illusion or is it real? Addie takes out her violin, but before she starts to play, she gives Addie some wax to plug her ears so that she is not also taken by the enchantment. So now she's deaf, and you know, looking around, when Addie grabs her, she turns, and there is Dacre. Dacre has found them, and obviously it's his realm. He can sense pretty much everything there, I guess. But Iris begins to attack him because he's going after Addie. He knows, like, he sees the violin and he understands what they're trying to do. And so Iris is trying to distract him so that Addie can keep playing. He manages to hit her and throw her to the ground. So she's like coughing up blood. She hit the ground so hard. So Dacre, as he like reaches down to take the sword from Iris and choke her out, basically, he looks up and sees Inva. And so he, you know, stops attacking Iris and rushes towards Inva, just absolutely transfixed by her, forgetting essentially that these two people are there. Iris sits up and sees Addie, who slowly begins to play again. Meanwhile, Eithrols have gathered and are circling around overhead, and they watch as Dacre tries to slap Inva, but you know, he doesn't even get to touch her. He falls to his knees as the music starts to affect him. So he is slowly falling asleep, staring up at Inva. And the Eithrols begin to fall as well. So these wyverns are just like crashing down from the sky, and the Eithrols are dying. Like they are splitting open on impact. Disgusting. And then everything is quiet. Obviously, there's like some more dramatic stuff going on there during the fight, but So Iris and Addie, seeing now the Eithrols are dead, Dacre's asleep, Inva is right there. They try and speak to her, but Iris realizes that, oh, it's just an illusion. Inva cannot talk to us. She looks down at Dacre, basically indicating like they need to make their move. And so Iris, you know, goes forward. She's already cut her hand on it, and she decapitates him. And as she does, Inva disappears. So there have been several scenes with Roman between here and last time and now, but they've all basically been nothing burgers. So this is the first scene with him that's important. And he wakes up feeling the ground move, and there is like clicking iron and steam, and he's just like, oh my god. And it's Lieutenant Shane waking him up, and Shane grabs him and pulls him up and is like helping him escape. And of course Roman is like, why are you helping me? And Shane reveals that he is the one who stole Captain Landis's key from the table, and that he had framed Roman to save his own skin. Shane reveals that he is part of the graveyard. They weren't just the thugs enforcing a curfew around town. They were also planning a coup, basically, against Dacre. So that's why he had willingly joined Dacre and had all his memories, which, you know, Roman had been thinking about through the story. Shane tells him, like, Dacre's dead, but I haven't heard where his key is. And Roman is like, what? How? And Shane tells him, like, your girl Iris cut off his head and brought it up to a cafe not long ago. Which is absolutely crazy. Like, can you imagine? Like Medusa or something. And, you know, as they're limping back to the surface, Roman begins to cough more, and Shane tells him, like, you really need to go to a doctor. But there are going to be so many sick soldiers now. Everyone that Dacre healed is now going to be re-injured, essentially. And Roman is like, why did you betray me? And Shane retorts with, well, why didn't you deliver the message? And, you know, Roman tells him, like, hey, I couldn't find the guy. And so they kind of reach an understanding. You know, Shane tells him, like, I couldn't leave you to die because I know that you could have thrown me under the bus after I threw you under the bus. But now there are no debts. And Roman agrees, there are no debts. So they make it up through one of the stairwells into the mortal realm. And so Iris has gone back to the Oath Gazette office, and that building is gone. There's nothing left. And so she is sure that Forrest and Sarah aren't here. So she knows that, like, he would have gone to Sarah's house to be with her father, but she decides to look through the rubble anyways, just in case. And of course, she gets stopped by men with guns who ask her if she's the one who killed Dacre because she is covered in blood. Specifically, they call the blood of the gods ichor, don't ask me. And it's gold. She just blows past them and they don't stop her. And so she goes back to the ink-ridden Tribune where she finds Helena. Helena has survived. The building barely made it. And Helena is like, hey, you need to get home because the graveyard's going around and capturing Dacre's soldiers, his traitors. Like, you don't want to get mixed up in that. Like, it's pretty dangerous. So that's when we learn that Shane and Roman, who have made it to the surface, they've emerged in a random rich person's house, and it's the safe house that Roman didn't know about. And the soldiers are going crazy, and Shane is like, oh shit, like, we need to get out of here. So they try and go back to the door, but Roman sees an injured soldier just like bleeding out, and he decides to help him. And at this point, Shane is like, bye, dude. I did what I could. You're not coming with me. Peace out. And he runs off. But Roman tries to get the injured soldier to a doctor. But as he is doing so, a grenade comes in through the window and explodes. And Roman is just conscious enough to realize that he's being taken by the graveyard to, quote unquote, witness justice. And so Iris, of course, goes to her apartment to, escape the graveyard people, just in case. And maybe she'll find Forrest there. But instead, she finds a graveyard guy. And so at first, she's trying to escape and run away from him. But it turns out to be Bruce. And he stops her with, Miss Winnow, it's me. And he, is like, please, you need to come with me. They're going to kill Roman. He was captured with the soldiers, and they're taking no prisoners, right? They're executing them. And so he's like, do you have anything to prove he worked for Inva secretly? Anything that would save him? And so she's, yes, she has his letters. And so she grabs the letters and they run to go save Roman. So of course, Roman is lined up against a wall to be executed by firing squad. And they, they raise their guns and they're about to shoot. And Iris runs to shield him with her own body. And luckily, the soldier who was the graveyard guy who was supposed to shoot Roman did not shoot through Iris. And so she has saved his life. The other soldiers fall to the ground dead, unfortunately. They basically are like, get out of the way, woman. Like, what's wrong with you? He's a traitor. And she insists, like, no, I have proof. And she gives them the letter from Roman showing, like, where he said, like, burn my letter. Like, I gave you all the information I could, blah, blah, blah. And the soldier's kind of like, how do we know this is him? Like, this could be anybody's letter, right? Iris is like trying to figure out like how else she can argue, because basically they're like, you could have just typed this letter up yourself. Until Keegan appears, Brigadier Keegan, and she, comes out unarmed and says like she just wants a peaceful discussion, and that these soldiers deserve to be processed through the justice system. It's not fair to kill them without trial. Like, they need to be treated humanely. We need to like find out what is going on, which is true, because obviously it's not public knowledge that Dacre was basically like controlling these people and manipulating them by erasing their memories. So it's like, yeah, some people joined him willingly, but a lot of these men were victims. And so she kind of knows that, but she like frames it as like, lower your guns and let us engage in an intellectual democratic discussion about what is moral as it is just, and how we are to move forward to begin healing from this, right? And the graveyard guy is kind of like, fine, whatever. But Iris is able to take Roman home, right? And they're sitting there sobbing into each other on the ground. And it was so sad. After that, he is taken to the hospital where he has been stitched up and treated, and it turns out that his lungs have been permanently damaged by the gas. There is no way for him to heal, but he can take medicine to kind of alleviate the symptoms, but it is going to affect him for the rest of his life. And he keeps trying to fight to get out of the hospital, but the doctor is basically like, I can keep you here as long as I want. So you better get with the system, dude, or I'm not gonna approve you for release. And while he's in the hospital, Iris joins the rescue crews, kind of, who are going around trying to find people. Of course, as the days stretch on, it's very, very obvious that pretty much they're just all gonna be dead. And it is so sad. Like, she is going through all the neighborhoods day by day looking, when finally they're in the neighborhood where Sarah was from. So she was kind of going in a line towards Sarah's neighborhood, and they find Forrest and Sarah's bodies under the rubble. Forrest died protecting Sarah, but she also died. Yeah. And so she is just collapsing to the ground, absolutely heartbroken. And Roman, who is in the hospital, he realizes like the Ink Ridden Tribune is the only newspaper left. And so he starts ordering it to his bedside and reading about what happens to all of these people. And he finds out that his father was found guilty on 3 charges, for being a willing accomplice in the transportation of hazardous gas, for conspiring with the enemy and harboring them without proper counsel, and for knowing of the plan for mass destruction, and for doing nothing. His sentence is 70 years in prison with no chance of parole. So his dad is out of the picture now. And then he sees Dr. Herman O. Little, professor of chemistry at Oath University, and his daughter, Eleanor A. Little, are hereby proclaimed guilty of war crimes and sentenced to life in prison for the creation and production of hazardous gas and bombs that were used as a weapon against civilians and soldiers. So his ex-fiancée from book 1 will spend her life in jail for helping her father create weapons of mass destruction. And he kind of feels bad for her, but also doesn't. Every day he looks at the list of the dead, the casualties from the war, and he is, horrified to find 2 names together: Sarah L. Prindle and Forrest M. Winnow. And yeah, and he like flashes back to when his sister died, and he, again tries to escape, and the hospital is basically like, get it together, dude. Like, if you don't behave, like, I'm not releasing you. And finally, a few days later, he does get released with orders to arrest. And so he's like limping through town where he finds Iris. And conveniently, it is raining, so they get to embrace in the rain and be both sad and relieved with each other. I don't know. Some of these scenes, I'm like, this is like, I don't know. It just feels like you squeezed in a trope here. The same thing with Wild Reverence. There's like a scene, it's like they've had no physical contact and there's zero chemistry between them, but she's like in distress, stuck in the brain of an Aethral. And so the love interest like comes behind Matilda and holds her. And it's like, they don't have that level of intimacy yet for me to believe like that was just like a natural thing to do. I don't know. It just felt like, oh, this is just like a trope for sad people in rain and sad people spooning each other. I don't know. Anyways, we flash forward 3 months later, where Iris is moving out of her flat to go live with Roman, and she decides that, unfortunately, as they are packing up the apartment, she finds a letter from Forrest, sad face, and he had written a letter about how Sarah has begun visiting him and how they are interested in each other. And he had gone to the doctor because she had convinced him, and he's like, I realized that there was no reason for me to be afraid. The doctor believed him when he told him what happened. And it was just like, oh my gosh, how sad. And, that's when Iris decides that she's going to go spread Forrest's ashes. And so Tobias, Addie, and Roman go north of Oath, because though they spread her mother's ashes back in Avalon Bluff, she decided that like the site from the north with like the wildflowers and the hills and the creeks and stuff like is more like her brother. Right. Iris had given their mother's ashes to the field of Avalon Bluff, and she decided somewhere in the east would be more fitting for her brother, a place that was green and promising with hills that never seemed to end. And she realizes as she's spreading her brother's ashes that like this is the valley that Inva showed her in her dream. And that's it. They go back home. But a year later, it is revealed that Roman and Iris have moved to the countryside. They live in a little cottage together. They have a garden, and Roman is writing a book. And so he'll write every day, and Iris edits what he has written. Meanwhile, she is still writing like articles for the newspaper. So they both are pursuing their dreams, and, you know, their life has come together. They talk about having lunch with his mom and grandma, and then going to see Addie's concert with Tobias. And Roman finds a note from her in his pocket that tells him to go to the wardrobe, like he used to find her letters. And her last letter is like, "Dear Roman, books are difficult things to write, or so I hear. As the author, you will love the words one day and despise them the next. But I'm going to echo what a very smart, very handsome, and very infuriating former rival once said to me. Keep writing. You will find the words you need to share. They are already within you, even in the shadows, hiding like jewels." So, Carver. I look forward to the next chapter, the one you will write in your story, as well as the one we write together. Love, Iris. P.S. Impossible, Kit. And that is the end of the book. There is technically an epilogue where Inva just goes through town again, and then she has her harp, and by going through the underrealm, she's able to leave Oath for the first time in several centuries. And I don't know. What about that is just so unsatisfying. I feel so unsatisfied. And I'm just like conflicted about the magic system, because it's like, why does Inva have to suffer these repercussions for taking other people's power, but no one else from the other book did? I don't know. Maybe hearing me tell you all the story, you'll be able to understand what I'm trying to say. As for Wild Reverence, basically you are following the first god child born in a long, long time. Her name is Matilda, and her mother raises her in the underrealm, and she doesn't know who her father is. But as she grows up, Alva starts giving her scrolls with dreams written on them, because Alva records the dreams of mortals. And in these dreams, someone is dreaming about Matilda. And Matilda's like, interesting. And so she kind of like becomes a little rebellious, and she goes up to the mortal realm. And her power is that of the Herald, but she has a weak power, so she doesn't think she'll ever really be in danger. But she goes up to the mortal realm, where she finds the boy that was dreaming about her. And for some reason, they're like 10, right? They kiss each other, but it's like that's the first time she met him. She had just read about him before that. Like, I understand him because he was dreaming about her and interacting with her in those dreams, but whatever. And so they separate, and he continues to dream about her. And so she's reading about the conversations they've had in the dreams. But one day she tells him about the Aethral Scales, which are the like only weapon guaranteed to kill another god if you get them like in the throat or the heart. And her mother has been having them smuggled out of the underrealm to Skyward for money. Yeah, for money, except they burn the coins, and the coins play music because the underrealm has no music. So they're like enthralled by Skyward music. And Matilda tells the boy in the Vincent, she tells him about it in the dream, and then realizes later that Alva reads the dreams. She knows about the scales. And so, of course, that's because Dacre is throwing a fit now, like, well, who is smuggling scales out of here, right? These are my Aethral. So Matilda goes to her mother and warns her, like, oh my God, like I told someone in a dream, like Alva knows, they know, they're going to come after me. And while her mother is trying to calm her down, her friend, another goddess, slits her throat and steals her power. And so, of course, Matilda's like covered in her mom's blood, like, oh my God. And friend is like, okay, bye. And you need to get out of here too, or they're going to kill you. She leaves the underworld. Well, she flees deeper into the underworld, away from Dacre, and Matilda flees as well to Skyward because her mother's last words to her was her father's name. And so she calls her father's name, and he comes to her and accepts her as his child and takes her to the sky. And so her and Vincent are no longer able to communicate, but shortly after that, his uncle arrived to kill him, and he had written a prayer to Matilda and buried it, hoping it would find her and she'd come help him. But he didn't know that she was Skyward, which meant he would have to have burned her prayer to go to the sky, right? And so she grows up this other god falls in love with her, and so she sleeps with him for a while, but she doesn't agree to marry him, and so he's all pissed. And this is when Dacre starts saying, I want to marry Inva. I'm in love with Inva. And of course, he's torturing people to get Inva to marry him. But Matilda goes to deliver a message and realizes it's for Vincent. And she agrees to a fake marriage to save him from his uncle. Vincent managed to survive the assassination attempt, but the rest of his family was killed except for his little brother. And so the uncle was exiled, but he's back with an army years later. And he wants to take back the castle on the river. So Vincent's kingdom. And so they agree to a fake marriage. And when the army attacks, the guy that's in love with her like joins the uncle, and she manages to grab control of an aetherol and is like crashing it into people, but it just runs away with her consciousness basically. So she's like having a hard time to escape. And so Vincent, that's when he like hugs her from behind. And it's like, y'all have known each other like 2 days for real. What's going on? And meanwhile, Bade, the god of war, who like he made a vow to protect her when she was a child. And so he has to show up because he's like drawn to protect her. And meanwhile, his like mortal turned immortal wife is back home. And it's like a whole thing where Matilda is trying to like get out of different promises and then to protect Vincent. And it turns out that the god in love with her, the god of spring, he like is a puppet master behind the scenes, and Vincent kills his uncle, and then Matilda has to fight the god of spring. Meanwhile, she has awakened her real powers, and so she can ferry people from the underworld to back to life. So people who died that are like going to the afterlife, she can bring them back. And that's what got me too, because it's like she manages to save everybody she wants to save. There's like zero risk. I felt zero tension because she just like magically saves everybody. And roll my eyes. The god of spring kills Bade, and then as Matilda is dying, she kills the other god first. So at first she's sad because that means Bade's powers are gone. Poof, right? If the spring god took his powers and then the spring god died, those powers poof are just because they didn't come to Matilda. But she goes to the underrealm because she's dying, and she asks Bade if he wants to live. And of course he wants to live because he has a wife that he loves. And so she ferries him to life, but she cannot go because earlier in the book she made a promise to the goddess of death when she saved Vincent's brother from death. Well, not the goddess of death, the goddess of like the gate of the dead, because those are different. That she would serve 7 years, helping her record stories, right? Because she's a herald. And so she stays 7 years under, like in the afterlife, writing down stories, and then she gets to come back to life. So Bade is back to life, Vincent's brother's back to life, she's back to life, and then she goes to find Vincent, and they live the rest of their life together in a little cottage because he gave up his throne to his brother. And meanwhile, the power that they got from Bade's wife was that no one could steal their magic, but then she doesn't use that for anything else. It's just to conveniently make Bade and Matilda be totally fine at the end. That's literally all it did. Like, it has no impact on the actual mechanics of the world. And so she lives with Vincent until he dies, and then she decides to walk into the underrealm by herself. And the epilogue of this book is that Inva, who is stuck in oath and alive, calls Matilda because Matilda can come back to life whenever she wants. She chose to walk into the underworld to be with Vincent, but she is able to go to and from the gate. So it's like, what do you mean if Dacre and Inva and everyone else is dead? Oh, magic's gone forever. But it's not. Matilda is still technically alive. You know what I mean? And like, yeah, her powers kind of suck, like in the scheme of like helping mortals. Like, she's a herald. She would deliver messages between the gods, and then her power is to like bring the dead back to life, right? Like rain and the harvest are probably way more important to humans. But I don't know. It was just kind of like, so after reading Wild Reverence, I was just like, why did we learn this? Oh, and so because Inva called Matilda, and then she takes her herald powers, like she borrows them to make those 3 typewriters. And then Matilda goes back to the underworld, and Inva's like, oh yeah, be alone in oath. And it was just like, why did I read this story about Matilda? It didn't change anything. Like, yeah, she helped one little local lord keep his throne. I don't know. It just didn't feel important. Oh, and she saves this little boy while Vincent's living in the countryside without her. Before she comes back, he becomes friends with the neighbors who have a baby, and the baby likes him and calls him Uncle Vincent. And so when the baby dies from like a sickness, she meets him at the gate so that she can write down his story for the goddess of the gate. And the baby says Vincent. And she's like, oh my God, this must be Vincent's son because he said Vincent's name. And it's like, what toddler calls their father by his name? None of them. Zero toddlers do that. Why did you assume like that's his baby? Oh my God, he must have moved on without me. But she saves the baby because I don't want Vincent to be sad. And I don't know. Yeah. So it's like she gets everything she wants with like zero effort. I don't know. And she did. There's just like no logic to any of her decisions. And it's like, why did I learn any of this? I did not feel satisfied after finishing that book, which it's very well written. And I liked the descriptions of things. And that one, I was happier with the world building because it's supposed to be more ancient, more simple life. I understood this is the lord of this area. This is the lord of that area. That's the lord of this other area, etc. So then trying to translate that to the Divine Rivals world building, it's like you don't explain anything about the government except for 2 sentences in book 2. You know, like I'm confused this whole time. You're talking about the East, the West. You're not talking about other chancellors. There are 5 chancellors. Where are the other ones? Why aren't they making any decisions? Why aren't they discussing this with Chancellor of Release about the war? He's just like, the war won't reach here. It's in the West. Like, dude, I don't know. Now I'm all fired up. Because it's like while reading, I'm like, man, this is very enjoyable. I'm going. I'm liking this. And then I get to the end and I'm like, wait, I like stumbled over half these steps. Half the stairs were missing. How did I even get up to the 2nd floor? I don't know. Well, hopefully you enjoyed me telling you all about Ruthless Vows and then that little short summary there at the end about Wild Reverence, because for the record, this time took me 4.5 hours. We'll see how much I cut out, but well, that's it. Is there a typewriter emoji? I know there's like a computer emoji. You can put that in the comments. That's all for now. I will see you next time.